here we go. Okay. Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Albany City Council meeting of Monday, May 6th, 2019. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please note we say the traditional Pledge of Allegiance as it was prior to the addition of the phrase "under God." I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Barnes?
Here.
Councilmember Moss?
Present.
Councilmember Pilch?
Here.
Vice Mayor McQuaid?
Here.
Mayor Mason?
Here. We do not have any ceremonial matters tonight. We met in closed session on several items, and they are listed on the closed session agenda, and we gave direction to staff. We turn to the number 5, the consent calendar. Consent calendar items are considered to be routine by the City Council and will be enacted by one motion. By approval of the consent calendar, the staff recommendations will be adopted unless otherwise modified by the City Council. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a council member or a member of the audience requests removal of the items from the consent calendar. Do we have any council requests for consent items to be removed?
5-9.
5-9.
5-6, I have a question.
5-6. Any others? Does anyone in the public wish to pull something from the consent calendar? Okay, then let's go to item 5-6.
So this was an item on the JPA for the transit station shelters. The trade-off is that whoever gets the advertising contract is supposed to take care of the shelters. How much maintenance is involved in that? I keep hearing that a lot of our bus shelters have become essentially bathrooms for certain parts of the population. And I can't imagine that Clear Channel or any other advertiser is going around daily cleaning that up. I'm wondering whether we should be getting, the revenues from that, and maybe it's time for the city to take that on.
It's definitely something we can look into in terms of our current practice with the service provider that the JPA is using. City of Albany services do tend to frequent the bus shelters to remove trash or other issues that occur. So we are basically secondary and oftentimes more responsive than the current company. And I've asked our staff to make sure as we go into these requests for proposals as this joint powers authority that we definitely continue to ask that and express that concern.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments on this item?
Yeah, I do Blue Glove Crew on Monday mornings with Alan Kane and the other folks from the Solano Avenue Association. Monday is usually the worst day because it's been over the weekend. Clear Channel, it's okay. It's not great. I don't see anything really toxic. I mean, occasionally there's a lot of us have done Blue Glove Crew. There's a needle occasionally, things like that. So we can see, but I think you could probably check in with, we should probably check in with the Solano Avenue Association and see what their perception is on how well these things are getting cleaned up. But most of them, I believe, are on San Pablo, actually. But I was
Yeah.
cleaning them up this morning, so.
Thank you. And thank you for participating in Blue Glove Crew. I think that we need to give them more recognition than they receive. Then, if there is no further council comment on this item, is there any public comment on this? Seeing none, let's move to 5.9.
Thank you. I was just curious about 5.9. Albany's requesting that MTC upgrade their software to reflect pavement conditions. And I'm just wondering if we've had any conversation with MTC on this. How much would that cost them? Is it something that's available to them? Have we talked to any other jurisdictions regarding supporting us in this, or if they're even interested? This came directly from Traffic and Safety. I don't believe there's a staff recommendation, but I just wonder if staff has any opinion on this.
This came up as part of the discussion by staff with the traffic and...
Could you please identify yourself for the record?
Justin Freed, Transportation Planner for the City of Albany. This came up as part of our discussion with Traffic and Safety on the city's pavement management program. We use outside consultants that use the software, but it was a discussion item at Traffic and Safety on the limitations of the software itself to serve for evaluating other modes. It's not something staff has had a conversation with other jurisdictions or with MTC on directly.
Is it possible to do that?
Yes, we could if directed by council.
I just want to say, I saw this also and had some concern. We're a little town with 20,000 people. MTC, I believe, covers the whole 9-county Bay Area. That's 7.7 million people. So we might want to have a little backup, and before we, approach MTC about this issue, is to see if other public works directors or, other staff people in the rest of the 9 counties are having any problem with the software. Because I think our little town all by itself would not have a lot of credibility if we were sticking our neck out on this one.
So am I hearing something of an appetite to defer this and perhaps reconsider it in the future? What is
that's my appetite.
Vice Mayor McQuaid, do you?
Yeah, I think perhaps if staff's meeting on a more regional or countywide basis, they could maybe start some conversation and see where this goes on a little broader scale.
I think the recommendation is fine as it is.
Yeah, I think the recommendation is just a request to talk about this, yeah? Is my understanding, so I don't...
Well, it's not.
I don't think we have to micromanage this.
To modify
Well, to
StreetSaver,
perhaps
so
modify it,
it's.
But imagine, in any case, there's going to be some give and take on this. I wouldn't expect MTC to react, immediately and say, oh, of course, we'll modify it.
Anything Albany wants, MTC will do,
Well, they
yes.
should be doing that, but...
Okay. Well, I'm comfortable with deferring it if we've got, 2 council members who are not comfortable with it. Let's ask per Vice Mayor McQuaid's suggestion for some additional discussion. Let's do that and plan to bring this one back.
Yeah, I would just be comfortable if we had some other cities who had our back if we went up against MTC, which is a big bureaucracy.
Yeah, it makes sense not to be just a tiny city asking for big changes that without building alliances. Okay, do I hear a motion on the consent calendar?
So moved,
With, except for 5-9.
except for 5-9, yeah.
Second.
Could you take the roll?
Councilmember Barnes?
Yes.
Councilmember Moss?
Yes.
Councilmember Pilch?
Yes.
Vice Mayor McQuaid?
Yes.
Mayor Nason?
Yes.
Motion carries, except for 5-9.
Okay, we move on to good of the city. This is for persons desiring to address the city council on a matter that is not on the agenda. Please note that city policy limits each speaker up to 3 minutes. The Brown Act limits the council's ability to take or discuss items that are not on the agenda, so such items are normally referred to staff for comment or to a future agenda. If you would like to speak in good of the city, please pass in a speaker card to the city clerk. And who do we have speaker cards for?
We have Kim Denton, Susan Schwartz, and Jeremiah.
Very good. Ken? Ken, what's the last name?
Kim
Oh,
Denton.
Kim Denton. Excuse me, madame. All right.
I'm here tonight as an Albany resident. I already cleared this with our city attorney. It is regarding the sugar sweetened beverage, but it is not how you're spending it. It is how it's being collected. Are you aware that Target, at least, and I think Safeway is as well, they're discriminating against people that purchase diet sodas? The prices are higher, and they also do not honor sales in any city that charges a sugar sweetened beverage. That was all I wanted to bring up.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Susan Schwartz, the head of Friends of Five Creeks, 23-year-old all-volunteer group working. I'm here about Codornices Creek, as you can guess. First, the good news: we are delighted that Albany has put Margot Cunningham, who's been doing such a great job with the vegetation on Albany Hill, in charge of vegetation management on Codornices. This, I think, is going to be a great partnership. We also are inundated with volunteers. Last month, we had the Northern California Science Writers, Rigetti Computing, those are the quantum computer guys, and Meyer Sound, that's the really fancy sound. Besides our own general work party on May 18th, I hope some of you will join us. We're hoping for some Berkeley firefighters, too. We have Uber coming, and a firm that creates theaters in large spaces. I have to tell you that part of the attraction is the microbreweries down the street. Now, with regard to the April 3rd fish kill, we are very glad that Albany and almost every other agency I can think of is reviewing their procedures. This kind of discharge is, of course, much more than a local problem. It is statewide. And the questions range from persistent chemicals that may be accumulating in the bay to whether it's safe to fuel cardboard recycling trucks with compressed natural gas. Because of Amazon, there's a tremendous increase in the number of those loads, and this is Berkeley's second such fire this year. That's also a nationwide trend. On the downside, we so far have found no live fish and heard no reports of live fish in Codornices Creek. We are concerned about the Department Fish and Wildlife, in our view, underestimating the numbers of fish killed and overestimating the probability that they will recover on their own. We're speaking in writing to many agencies and commissions, and of course we'll have to see what comes out of all these reviews. It's going to be a long haul. On the other hand, last week, I saw spectacular sprays of tiny white flowers along the creek. This was panicled bulrush, a native that just spread on its own downstream from San Pablo into what we call the restored reaches. I encourage you to read our May e-news, which is available on the Friends of Five Creeks website. Click on e-news. The entire issue is devoted to Codornices Creek. Besides our take on the fish kill, there are some fascinating historic photos that show how far we've come from what used to be a straight, bare ditch. Nature will heal itself if we give it a chance.
Thank you. Mr. Pinguelo?
Good evening, City Council. My name is Jeremiah Garrett Pinguelo. And I think it's such a great thing that our city is a sanctuary city. I know 6 months ago, that was a real big popular thing, being a sanctuary city. But, you know, popularity dies, time goes, and things kind of fade out. This also, one of Albany's slogans, you know, I graduated Albany High School in 2001, went to Long Beach State, became a longshoreman at the Port of Oakland. I got injured at work, so I had no money coming in. I wasn't a registered longshoreman, and I ended up getting evicted from my home, my apartment I was renting, because I had no money coming in, not enough to pay rent. So I thought, well, hey, I sure don't want to be homeless on the streets, so I bought an RV to put a roof over my head. That's the best thing I could do for myself to survive. So that's what I did. I bought an RV to put a roof over my head, to not be homeless on the streets. You know, it's funny that a sanctuary city with this slogan makes a municipal code saying that you can't park your RV in Albany. So you're saying you would rather me be homeless living on the streets. I'll sell my RV. Sure, I'll go abide by your municipal code. I'll just sleep on the sidewalk right where I used to park, right on the ground, because it's actually not illegal to sit or lie. If that's what you'd rather your citizens do, if that's your sanctuary city ideas, if that's your standing against hating on my lifestyle, on how to put a roof over my head, the best I could do, so you'd rather me be homeless on the streets than to put a roof over my head. I mean, if that's the municipal code you're trying to create, I don't know, what are your ideas for that? Seems like you're just kind of, it's really easy to hate on people who don't work and have 9-to-5 jobs, who don't live in apartments or homes, who don't have showers, who could wear clean clothes and do laundry. It's easy. It's very easy to judge against people. It's so easy to judge. I'm working again now, and I see how easy it is to judge. I see people riding bicycles, doing the best they can to survive. So please, I don't know what's up with this municipal code, but I'll go lie on the street if that's what your sanctuary city wants.
Thank you. Please, folks, the rules in this chamber, we don't clap and we don't boo. We listen to everyone with respect and equal respect, whether we agree with their opinions or we don't. Do we have any other speakers for good of the city?
Thank you. Hi, Susan Renault. I'm Albany resident, and I work with the homeless through the Showers program, and also I work at Albany Cares. My subject tonight is similar to Jeremiah's in that I would like to encourage the City Council to go into negotiations with Golden Gate Field and keep trying to get access to some of their parking lot for our homeless who live in vans, cars, and mobile homes. I believe that this has been an area of discouragement in the past, but I think there's a lot of pressure coming from other areas in the East Bay for Berkeley and Albany to find a solution. So I'm just suggesting more dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you. Any?
Yes.
Okay.
Dan.
Hi. David Danby, sorry. A neighbor forwarded a link to me of the Keep Albany Safe for Everyone video mentioning that it was amusing. When I viewed it, I was taken back by the characterization of the two seniors walking with canes who were trying to get around a parked car in a driveway. The car was protruding over the sidewalk. It could have been a skit on Saturday Night Live making fun of seniors. I walk quite a bit around Albany, and the people I see on the sidewalks are high school students, families walking with their kids, groups of adults going to restaurants, couples holding hands, wheelchair users, people with disabilities, people with low vision or are blind, people experiencing homelessness, and young kids being pushed in strollers. Why weren't they included in this video? In my opinion, the video is uninformed and ageist. Thank you.
Thank you.
I also wanted to speak to the video, I think.
Could you identify yourself for the record, Judy?
I actually don't have to legally. I looked it up.
If that's your preference.
Yep. And you know who I am anyway, so. So I wanted to speak to the video. I don't know if the city council has seen the video or anybody from the city. Am I wrong? No, you're not wrong. I thought I was right. Yeah, I looked it up to see. I was wondering who had input into the video. I don't know if you've seen it, but if you haven't seen it, you should take a look at it and maybe offer whoever made it some comments about including the entire community when you make a video that's supposed to be about the community. I also tried to get here earlier because I wanted to pull something else off the consent calendar, so I'm going to pretend I'm not talking about that and just make a general statement, which is that if there's a requirement, if somebody wants to apply for something as simple as, for instance, having their curb painted red, and they have to pay money, I would like the city to rethink the money part, because it doesn't seem right that people with money would be able to request that and people without money wouldn't be able to. And then finally, I just wanted to totally support what Jeremiah and Susan said. I found Jeremiah's, in particular, his story. I think it's the idea that Albany has joined Berkeley and outlawing RVs is incredible to me, and I don't really understand how that could have happened, and I hope that there will be a change. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it.
Okay, so no further speakers on good of the city. We will move on to council member reports on state, regional, local meetings attended and announcement of future meetings, plus the city manager's report. Does anyone want to report on meetings attended? Michael?
Well, I was up on April 24th. I was up at the state capitol with the League of California Cities. It was a legislative action day. I attended one hearing on a controversial bill, SB 50, press conference on a bill by Senator Bell and McGuire, SB 5, which would provide funding for affordable housing. And then we had a discussion amongst ourselves, and Senator Scott Wiener, the author of the controversial SB 50, came and answered a few questions. It was a useful day.
Thank you.
On the first, I attended the Tom Bates Field JPA meeting. The discussion was around perhaps redoing the JPA. They've done surveys now on who uses those fields, and they'd like to get the maintenance dues more in alignment with, which cities are using them. Emory, as it currently stands, we're all paying in $15,000 a year to keep those fields functional. Emeryville has very few kids playing there. Albany has a pretty high number. We have a lot of soccer players in Albany. So that's probably coming up in the near future once they get some more data as to what those numbers would be. Otherwise, I attended the end of the chamber mixer last week, and also met with Sophie Hahn to hear her views on the Solano Avenue development proposals.
Thank you. And thank you, the Fields. Thank you for taking on the JPA. That used to be my beat, and it's a big issue and is a big issue across a very large section of the East Bay. Councilmember Pilch.
I attended the Legislative Action Day as well, and I believe, Councilmember Barnes, you actually spoke at the hearing on SB 50, did you not? Yes. And I attended a number of meetings with legislators and other activities that day. It was very informative. And I attended a Reach Code meeting along with Vice Mayor McQuaid, which was sponsored by EBCE, held in Berkeley with Councilmember Kate Harrison. A very informative meeting. I attended Best of the Fest, the Albany Film Fest, and I had the very distinct pleasure and honor to meet with a couple of troops of the Cub Scouts. That's it.
Thank you. Vice Mayor McQuaid.
I attended a couple of events at the Senior Center, the Resource Fair, and also the White Elephant Sale. I attended the meeting of the artists that's hoping to do a mural on San Pablo Avenue, an ACTC, Alameda County Transportation Commission meeting. Barbara Lee held a town hall on race with Congressman DeSagne, a little bit north of us. I attended a memorial for Rafael Fuentes Lee, who was killed last year. The Everyone Home community meeting. I was lucky enough to get to attend the CERT final, the emergency preparedness team. And this morning I attended, representing Albany, Keith Carson's first meeting on the 2020 census. And if I could, I'd like to go a little bit further. Tomorrow we're starting our first 2 workshops on business resiliency. I think Captain Boydo might have a big sign to show us. We're having 2 workshops for the business community, one at 7:30 in the morning at Belmont Village, and one at 2 in the afternoon at Church on the Corner on Solano. An opportunity for business owners to come and learn about keeping their business safe in the event of an emergency. Nice. Great. Super. That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. I attended a good number of these, but I've got to say this. I think that I had the most fun meeting of all because I went to the Love the Bulb art opening and the dance festival and greeted the assembled. And I encourage people to go out and take a look. The dance was a one-day thing, but the art is still out there to be viewed. I also attended a Citizens for East Shore Parks meeting and the East Bay Regional Park District Park Advisory Committee meeting and a reception last night for special districts across the country who look to the East Bay Regional Park District as a model. And I can say only in the vaguest kind of way that it does seem that wildlife lovers and dog lovers and art lovers are gradually making progress on the ability to live together and work together for the betterment of the Albany waterfront, and that is very encouraging. I attended a presentation on the Voting Rights Act by Preston Jordan at the Albany Democrats, and I'd like to mention that we are losing a local leader, Jennifer Radix Johnson, who has been serving on the Charter Review Committee, is moving out of town, and there is now a vacancy, and people who are interested in that should speak with Peggy McQuaid. I've been to meetings with Stop Waste and the Alameda County Transportation Commission, the memorial for Mr. Fuentes Lee, and a remembrance for the woman who was murdered in Poway on and a Holocaust remembrance event, which Mayor McQuaid attended with me. I read to children at the Bananas Festival, went to the mixer at Ruby Rugs, and the art reception at the North Berkeley Investment Partners. For future meetings, I want to mention that I think we should plan, and I will coordinate with staff and with other interested council members about doing some kind of community forum and educational event around SB 50 and related efforts to increase the pace of housing development throughout the region. It's very important policy matters that are going to have an enormous effect, and we don't know which ones will ultimately be adopted, but I think that it's healthy for everyone who is concerned about these issues to learn about these various policy initiatives. Do we have a city manager report?
Yeah, a couple of updates. This weekend, we sent out our first e-news for the business community. Hopefully some of you on our mailing list received this. It's specific to business owners in our city. It recognizes the upcoming resiliency meetings that Vice Mayor McQuaid noted, as well as other opportunities for local businesses to get involved, highlights our Economic Development Committee and the City Council's Economic Development Strategic Plan. Also identifies some ways that the city can reach out and support businesses through disaster preparedness and safety. So again, that's our e-news for our business sector, and hopefully many of you see our weekly e-news for the general community as well. We have recently put out our tax rebate flyer. Again, this is an annual program for those seeking exemptions or reductions in certain parcel taxes or other related measures. You should see this postcard. It's also, it's coming in the mail, and it's also posted on our website in terms of the process. We also had a recent senior expo. You saw this on the other informational materials as well, but this was very well received by the Senior Center and the folks that attended that, and demonstrates the commitment throughout our multiple public safety departments to human services and outreach. I'd really like to express appreciation to our neighborhood services manager, who's doing a fantastic job in organizing these events and promoting a shared public safety outreach, Sid Schoenfeld. The Recreation Department is busy as always. They have quite a few events regarding Play Like a Girl. Hopefully some of you have seen these posted. There's one posted at the Community Center. There's an event on June 2nd at Memorial Park where girls can really figure out what sports are and what sports they might like to play in. It's a really well-received event. There's also a film going along with this, Sporty Shorts Play Like a Girl movie night, which is in affiliation with our Film Fest and our Recreation and Community Services Department. That will be Thursday, May 30th at the Albany Twin. I understand tickets for this are going very quickly, so please take advantage of this opportunity. The movie is free. Also, a new program that the city is promoting, which is the Adaptives Program, After School and Summer Camps, PALS, Peer Assistant Leadership and Support. Classes run spring and fall, and this is an opportunity for someone who has actually been affiliated with the school district, who is working with the city as well for adaptive needs, and an opportunity for students or children with special needs to be mainstreamed into current recreational programs. Fantastic new opportunity. I think I'm almost done here. And e-news that came out today, or a promotional that came out today, is Home Fire Sprinkler Week through our fire department and neighborhood services. A reminder about the importance of home sprinklers and ways that you can look into improving your system if needed. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a lot to give shout outs to there. I would like to, I failed to mention the Memorial Park cleanup, where quite a few volunteers turned out and did quite a lot of work. It was very impressive. But I'd particularly like to give a shout out to Jeremy Allen and the e-news. You know, as we all get tons of email, the e-news is something that I always look forward to. Everything is beautifully organized, and I encourage people who are not signed up on the city's e-news list to get on that list. So we'll move over to presentations, the review of advisory body work plans. Do we have, and our work plans tonight are the Community Media Access Committee and the Traffic and Safety, which we now call Transportation Commission. Can we start with Community Media Access?
Yes, we have both of the advisory body chair here tonight, and we'll start with Chloe Stapleton Gray with Community Media Access Committee.
Hello, I'm Chloe Stapleton Gray on behalf of the Community Media Access Committee, talking about our work plan. Our work plan is pretty similar from the 2017 through 19 one, but I'll be highlighting some of the changes that we have made. So we just had our 9th year of the Albany Film Fest in March, and we actually had one of the most people attending that we've ever had, so good for the Film Fest. So we offer a full week of film screenings and filmmaker panels and demonstrations, and then we always have a youth filmmaker event. It's an annual showcase for the local, national, and global short films and features, so we had films from all over the country and world coming into the Albany Film Fest. In 2018, the special screening of the music documentary Turn It Around, co-written by a former KALB staffer, Anthony Marcelletto, virtually sold out the Albany Twin, which was a new thing for the Film Fest. We also had a special focus screening on environment, women, and music, which continued into this year, and a special focus night on community activism and social justice was added. Attendance at the all-day Sunday short film screening has been estimated to be more than 1,000 during the course of the day, and hundreds attended the weeknight feature screenings. So this year, the attendance broke all the previous records. And then the cable cast of the City of Albany meetings is continuing, including the City Council meetings and all the other events. We also installed new equipment in the recreation control room, and then also a new projector for Albany EOC last year. And then in 2017, we upgraded the web stream of the KALB channel to HD, upgraded the digital audio mixers for city programs and events, and then upgraded the lighting as well for the events. The YouTube is now at 299 subscriptions and could be more at this point, and then the viewership is up to over 18K views last year. So for the Albany website in 2017, KALB assumed responsibility for the website maintenance and development, and that is ongoing. And then, as you may know, in 2017, KALB also created a new e-newsletter, as we've talked about earlier, that is delivered weekly to over 4,500 people, and it is one of our goals to increase that membership. On to the policy review and initiatives. We are keeping our initiative of keeping the Film Fest sustainable. We plan on keeping it up in our 10th year, and that is one of our goals that I'll get to later. So in our ongoing challenges, we're working to create a larger audience, encouraging a larger volunteer base, since that's something we always need, and then partner financial support. We also want to support more Albany-related programming, like at the Solano Stroll and other Albany events, to get a lot of community media. One of the challenges that we have found is just encouraging the community to produce content and just getting people on board. Something we just added at our last meeting to the work plan was supporting youth media education in Albany. We try and work with the high school and the other groups around Albany, and so we want to work with the Youth Services Division of the Recreation to get youth media into KALB and in Albany in general to really broadcast that, and working with the Film Fest and other city programs as well. We also added supporting economic development of Albany business communities through media, such as in ads and just local business promotion for KALB. We want to create a larger sense of community in Albany, since we are the Community Media Access Committee. And so we would like to support these businesses as well as promoting media throughout all of Albany. And then Albany Film Fest continues to engage citizens with the arts through our year-round film festival, as I previously talked about, and then Q&A sessions with filmmakers. And then we also try and work with partnerships with a number of Albany businesses and the Solano Avenue Association and other programs. We also are continuing to cablecast and stream the public meetings to allow citizens to see government in action, as well as, this meeting. And so lastly, our goals: we want to explore other connections with AUSD for media content and partnerships. We really want to keep expanding that. And then recognizing the 10-year anniversary of the Film Fest and KALB, since those are big anniversaries, and we want to recognize how far they have come and how far we want them to go and plans for the future. We want to research the feasibility of a KALB podcast, just as in other ways to get media accessible to anyone in Albany and include more voices in what we talk about. We plan on having more youth media classes in order to get youth engaged with what Albany and KALB are doing, so we can have more people creating media and producing it, and sort of a funnel into the media programs as well as potential jobs in Albany. And then we also want to just continue to support the Film Fest, since we work with them a lot to expand, knowledge and collaboration with other film festivals and organizations like other Bay Area film festivals. And then lastly, we want to support a new teen film fest to engage youth, since there is a teen section of the film fest, but we also want to make it a very welcoming environment for people to create media in. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments for Ms. Stapleton Gray? Actually, I should probably start with Councilmember Pilch this time.
No questions, thank you.
First, the direction. Okay. Councilmember Barnes?
Have you consulted with our Economic Development Commission on your economic development plans?
We haven't yet, since we just made this in our last meeting, so we plan on working into that before our July meeting, hopefully, and in the future, but we will be in touch.
Okay.
You guys do an amazing amount of work, and I'm always impressed by the fact that you're not meeting every month. You're meeting every few months, and when you consider both the film festival and the KALB part, it's a lot of stuff going on, and I'm a big fan. But I wondered if there'd been any discussion. This is kind of going off on this idea of a KALB podcast. Mm-hmm. It's often talked about in town how we no longer have a news outlet that serves Albany. The Journal is now it's serving not only Albany, but Kensington. It seems to be doing everything from North Alameda up through Contra Costa County. The Berkeley side is a great online source, but they're very hesitant about going into Albany, which they do occasionally, but not often enough. I have noticed there are a lot of sort of online TV stations now, this is the way I would put it, video feeds that focus on particular news. We're expanding our equipment. We don't exactly have a studio as far as I know, but there is space at the community center, I would say, particularly in the basement. I'm wondering if there's ever been any discussion about doing some kind of weekly news program that would be something different than the idea of this is what the city's doing and all of our wonderful events, but actually, taking on some of the issues. And you'll see tonight there are plenty of issues in town, and there always have been, but have some kind of thing where people could talk about and interview different sides to different stories. I don't know if this is something that would ultimately come in conflict with Brown Act or other things, as a public entity, we are somewhat restricted, but, and it would be great if some private enterprise would do this, but they're not. So if we have the resources, has any discussion like that ever happened at the?
Well, I think the podcast could sort of fit into that. I think we've discussed sort of wanting to engage the other voices in Albany with the videos and sound productions that we do. I am not sure if you are able to speak in a video according to the Brown Act, but we have been talking about a lot of different video ideas, and we're happy to hear about any of them. And then we're also getting new equipment, as I detailed earlier. Soon, I think we're getting some new cameras. So I think the Community Media Access Committee would definitely be open to making more videos about daily things. We have had subcommittees, but they haven't met very often and haven't worked out well, and that is something that we want to sort of work on and engage subcommittees that could meet outside of our regular meetings and do something like what you're saying.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor McQuaid, do you have any questions or comments?
Well, thank you for your report. It was really good. As I think's been said, I'm just always amazed at how much gets done. And the Film Fest is just such a wonderful event that we certainly are all grateful to all the work that goes into it. The only other thing in looking at all of the youth programming that you're doing and the work with the youth, Councilmember Boz and I are working on developing more of a youth programming in town, and I think we'll probably come and talk to you about how we can work together on that.
Yeah, that would definitely be a good idea, as well as if you saw the AV apprenticeship partnership is definitely something that has been going well so far, and we'd be happy to talk about that.
Wonderful. The work of your committee in the Film Fest, it really touches on everything that just about everything that we're trying to do as a community. It's social capital, it's educational, it's creativity, it's intergenerational, it's economic development, it's the uniqueness. You're using one of our most important historical buildings. People don't think about how lucky we are to have an active theater in town, and it's just amazing what you do. The only thing that I would I am stunned by how much you guys take on. The only thing that I think of sometimes is how wonderful it would be if Albany could host more film festivals. If there are many ethnic and, international, regional, subject-specific, wild and scenic, all kinds of different film festivals. And I would love to see Albany become a place where festivals come to present their work. And thank you. I want to say how I'm delighted that Council members Moss and Vice Mayor McQuaid will be working on the youth issue. I am very, very impressed and delighted at your chairing the committee this year, and you did a wonderful job. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Does anyone from the audience is there anyone from the public who'd like to comment on the Community Media Access Committee's work? Sure.
Yeah.
My name is Omar Saba. I'm a resident and I represent the workers of IATSE, which is the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees. That's in Alameda, Contra Costa, Solano County. I think it's amazing what you're doing. We work on movies and film in the Bay Area. I'm a set electrician by trade. And so if, we can connect afterwards, but there are jobs in the Bay Area for film. We're shooting films in Solano County, Alameda County, Contra Costa, all over the Bay Area. So this might be an opportunity for some of these kids. And audiovisual is a big thing as well, too. We're doing a lot of work in the audiovisual industry, and what she was talking about, there's people that are 50 years old that are trying to figure it out now that are making a really good wage. And so there's lots of opportunities that these kids can get. So I would love to be involved in that if possible.
Wonderful, thank you. Please do connect, you guys. Any other comments on this item? Well, then let's move on to...
Yes. Yeah, I was waiting till after public comment to say, number one, we do have an opening on the Community Media Access Committee in my appointment, so please spread the word and/or apply yourself so they could use the help. And I can't say much more than my fellow council members already did about how wonderful we feel the work is. And I'm a huge fan of the film festival, and I think it's a huge boon for Albany. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think then we are ready to take up the Transportation Committee's work plan.
So we have Chair Robert Del Rosario from Traffic and Safety Commission.
Great, thank you. On behalf of the Traffic and Safety Commission, soon to be Transportation Commission, I thank you for giving me the opportunity to present our 2019-2021 work plan. Before I go through the work plan, which is ambitious, but I will go through some of the highlights that I do want to go through some of our recent initiatives and accomplishments in the past couple of years. First, there's the approval of the relocation of the bus stop at San Pablo and Solano. That's been a long time issue here in the city that has finally come to some resolution, at least at the decision-making process. We did some upgrades, or approved some upgrades to Masonic Avenue, Marin Avenue intersection striping and signage, particularly how bikes and autos interact at that intersection. There was some confusion, and also with the Greenway being right there, we put in some clarifications on how that intersection better works for cyclists and pedestrians. We developed a policy for implementation of restrictions on street parking near intersections, basically to make intersections much more safe for pedestrians and cyclists to cross at intersections. We completed the plan for Kane's Adam bicycle facility study, so now that's on to the implementation phase, pending funding. We developed criteria for the City of Albany sidewalk program, and two of those key criteria are how often that sidewalk is used and also what the vertical displacement was on any type of repairs to those sidewalks. Design of the San Pablo Avenue Buchanan Street pedestrian improvements project was also completed and also ready for implementation pending funding. Curb management plan for Albany Middle School San Gabriel campus with all of the movements of the schools throughout the city. This was a particularly critical item that we're still ongoing in discussions with the school district. And then, of course, there's the Buchanan Marin Phase 3 undergrounding project, which has been recently completed, and we're on to looking at Phase 4. For the 2019-2021 review of work plans, first there's the City Council strategic items, and these I'll go through one by one. There's issued requests for construction bids to complete all striping projects in the city. These are particularly ATP striping, as well as any new bike routes that have to be involved or included. There's the execution of Phase 1 design for complete streets plan. These are the improvements along San Pablo Avenue. The pet improvements include flashing beacons, crosswalks, curb ramps, and then of course there's the bike crossing at Washington, which is one that we've been working on for quite some time. There's a sidewalk policy for sidewalk repair program, and that's looking at the criteria that I just had mentioned and turning that into formal policy. Improving public infrastructure, including streets and lighting, and then as well as implementing those projects in the city's CIP that improves street paving and lighting. I know with regard to lighting, we're looking at a master plan, and the first step in that would be evaluation of the existing lighting. So that will be something that we'll work on in the next couple of years, pending some funding. So the other work plan items, I know there's plenty. I'll just go through some highlights. Monitoring and, if necessary, preparing the regulatory framework for various shared mobility transportation modes. We do look at the more common modes of transportation in Albany, but we're also looking at the more transformative modes, given how transportation is changing throughout the Bay Area and the country. So really looking at these different shared mobility transportation modes. Also, there's an item on curbside management that's also related to shared mobility and how curbs can be more efficiently used given the different types of modes out there. Updating the criteria for implementation of traffic calming improvements. So we want to have a set amount of criteria for our traffic calming improvements so that we're not making those decisions on a subjective or one-by-one, case-by-case basis. And then the final policy initiative I want to point out is the preparation of the new active transportation plan. As you know, the last active transportation plan for the city was quite in-depth, and it's time for an update. So we're excited to take that on, but of course that also is pending funding. And then looking at the transportation improvements, some more tangible items for the city. There's, of course, the San Pablo Avenue Corridor project that's headed by ACTC. That's a very significant project with lots of complexities, and the city will be definitely impacted and benefited by that project. So we want to be involved in that process for planning as well as for public outreach. There's the implementation of the annual sidewalk and pavement projects just to improve upkeep of the sidewalks. We had a recent measure that passed a couple of years ago to improve our sidewalks, so implementing those projects. Modifications to curb management adjacent to Albany Unified School District facilities. This is broadening out the scope not only to the San Gabriel campus, but also looking at Albany High School and all of the different uses that will occur at the high school. Incorporation of new projects into the future CIP, including Keynes Adams bike facility and the Solano Avenue Complete Streets projects. Those are two large projects for the Traffic and Safety Commission as well for the city that we want to implement. Monitor the implementation of the I-80 Buchanan park and ride lot. So that's a new park and ride lot that should be coming online in the next, I believe, 6 to 12 months. So that's quite exciting. For commuters. Plan the completion of the cycle track between Sprout Store and San Pablo Marin. That's closing that gap of that great cycle track project that we installed there as part of that development. There's about a 200-foot gap there that we would like to close eventually. Implement safe routes to school improvements at Marin and Cornell. I believe this is primarily flashing beacons at that intersection. And the final project I want to point out is the implementation of Marin Buchanan Phase 4. And really what we want to do at Phase 4 is evaluate Phase 3 and see how that is working. We know that we cut back that budget or cut back the scope to meet the budget for that project. And so Phase 3, if there are some things that we need to improve upon, then we will look at a potential Phase 4 to make those improvements. So that's a summary. I'm sorry that I had so much there to discuss, but I'd be happy to take any questions or comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Barnes, I think you're up first on this one if you're interested in commenting, questioning?
Yeah, I appreciate, you compiling this, but it seems to me more a list of things that members of the commission might be interested in doing. It seems like too much work, and some of these things I don't think are really under the purview of your commission as opposed to planning and zoning or the public works department. And some of them I don't recognize us asking the commission to deal with, and some of them I think I just don't really understand. So I'm not really sure where to go from here. I think a public meeting like this isn't a great place to go through something like this line by line. I don't think that's a good use of the public's time. I think I would be most comfortable kicking this back down to although at the staff level, to have Robert and maybe some of the other commission members go over this and shape it a little more so that it's something that is more cohesive. I would like to see something more cohesive, a little more focused, and I'm open as to the best way of doing that.
That makes a lot of sense to me, actually. Councilmember Moss?
Yeah, there's a long list of things
Certainly
here.
is.
Looking through them, I think these are mostly in the purview of the Transportation Commission. There was one thing that I wondered about. You're going to be executing Phase 1 for the San Pablo Avenue design for complete streets, and yet we also have this corridor project that's coming in. And they may coincide, but that's not clear to me right now, because if the County Transportation Commission decides on rapid bus lanes and putting the bike lanes elsewhere, we could be doing a lot of work here that ultimately is sort of spinning our wheels. So I'm sure you guys are well aware of that, but I would just say, don't go too far down one path if we're going to have the Transportation Commission kind of overriding everything, if we think that's where that's going. So that's sort of a question and a comment. I mean, I presume you guys have thought about.
Yeah, if I may, the staff has been cautious about the improvements that we're putting forward in the short-term project. I think the long-term project, we do have some time with ACTC to go through planning, as well as funding, as well as making a project, and that's a very lengthy process. But the improvements that we were looking at for San Pablo, one, we definitely want to put in the bike crossing along Washington, and that's primarily going to be striping. I think there's some signal improvement there, of course, but I think that can be still go forward just because of the need of it, or the urgency of it. And then the remaining improvements are pet improvements, so that's improving crosswalks, curb ramps, such things that are more short-term improvements that wouldn't interfere necessarily with the long-term project.
Okay. Councilmember Pilch, anything?
Sure. I guess we're doing questions and comments at the same time. So I'll say that from what I know, it is a long list, but from what I know, these are all things that have been, these are not things that are invented out of thin air. These are all projects that have come along in due course, and ones that have to be brought to the Transportation Commission. And, we've got a very energetic Transportation Commission, including representation from the Transportation Planner of Berkeley, a former mayor, and a representative from AC Transit. Got a lot of expertise on this commission, and I think that they can handle this workload. And if the city has all this stuff to do, which it needs to do, and good stuff to do, that we should, we shouldn't try to micromanage this process too much. I'm sure that some of this stuff will fall off organically just due to lack of time, but I applaud them for being very detail-oriented with their list.
Thank you. Vice Mayor McQuaid?
Well, one of the reasons we've gone to this plan of having a work plan and bringing it to council and everybody being on the same page is to be sure that things are getting done that council wants to have done sort of in a organized fashion. And I tend to agree with Councilmember Barnes that there's an awful lot of things on here, some of which I don't think council really has had a chance to talk about and decide if this is really what we want them to do. There's plenty of work for traffic and safety to do, and I don't want them to have more than they can manage. And I would either like to go through it in a little more detail, or if it's the will of the council, to send it back for a subcommittee to relook at it. I'm not quite sure what the council wants to do before I jump in and start picking at it.
Okay. I share some of these concerns, and I'll tell you that when I'm out and about and talking to people about Albany, one of the most frequently commented on issues in Albany is the deterioration of our paving, that it has gotten noticeably worse. And I think that that's confirmed by the drop over the years in our PCI scores, both our annual and our rolling 3-year PCI score. And for that reason, we incorporated in the strategic plan the following: develop a timeline and funding plan to support the scheduling of CIP projects to achieve street safety-related infrastructure goals, including, number 1, street paving quality, PCI, number 2, appropriate night lighting of streets, sidewalks, and parks, and 3, safety features at intersections and other crossings of roadways. A lot of the things on your list touch on that in one way or another, but I think that we were envisioning a more unified approach where there would be kind of a recognition of the priority and what a great concern it is becoming to the public and to the council. And I would like to see the Transportation Commission take a look at that and say, well, how can we prioritize this? We've got a lot of things on our plate. And, you know, I do understand, and we did include implement and continue reporting on and updating the active transportation plan. I think that there is a tremendous focus on, particularly on bicycle issues, but we also have pedestrians, and we also have a vast number of people who are still driving their cars. And of course, you know, I'm not leaving out buses. I'm not leaving out buses intentionally here. But I think that we might need a more holistic and integrated sort of approach that takes into account especially the paving and other safety-related measures that just seem to be lagging more and more year by year. I also wanted to touch on the relationship between the Transportation Commission and the Albany City staff. One of the things we expect from commissions is that they will work constructively and collaboratively and have a good working relationship with the staff who support them, who are obviously, you know, key to achieving a lot of these things that you have listed. I was a little surprised when I watched the hearing on the Solano Complete Streets that it seemed like, well, how could this be coming up at this stage? Where was everybody when we were working with the consultant and with the community advisory group and all the work that was done? How could the Transportation Commission be so late to the game? So I hope that, you know, we can look at those things, look at the paving, the safety, and look at building a better relationship, having a better understanding of what the staff is doing, and take advantage of opportunities to get involved early rather than late, because that ends up costing time and money to the city. And those are my comments. Well, let's see if we have public comment. Does anyone wish to comment on the Transportation Committee?
Clay Larson, Albany. Start out by noting that parking is a problem in many parts of Albany. Despite this, the Traffic and Safety Commission voted to eliminate any consideration of a parking management plan, and that was an item that was in their old work plan. As a consequence, apparently the only parking that the Commission will be considering for the next 2 years are the development of bicycle parking standards and the reduction of automobile parking or the repurposing of automobile parking in Masonic. I'm not sure what direction the Council provided to make that a task. In deciding to eliminate any consideration of parking management, the Commission noted the Council's lack of enthusiasm for this whole topic. I had noted that in the recently adopted strategic plan, The parking management is sort of demoted to a second tier. I think it's referred to as a potential workplace addition. The commission also cited the 2015 parking study conducted by C.D. Smith, claiming that it showed that in general there was adequate parking in Albany. The C.D. Smith, and I'll keep repeating this, the C.D. Smith study was very flawed. It employed license plate recognition devices, and the consultant admitted that they are unable to provide accurate counts when cars are parked bumper to bumper. But that's the standard arrangement in many blocks in Albany. So I think we need competent, real data to show existing parking conditions, or this planning is not going to go anywhere. So parking is already a problem. I think it could get worse. The Council adopted new zoning requirements which drastically reduced the amount of parking for new housing, and the city staff recently got Council's approval for elimination of parking surveys when commercial uses undergo a change of use. So I think it's completely appropriate that the Council and the advisory bodies pay attention to parking. I don't think it's going to happen if it's nobody's work plan.
Thank you. Other public comment?
I just had a question. In Albany, most people I don't know about bicyclists, I don't think they stop at stop signs, but cars for sure don't stop at stop signs. And I was wondering who, I know in theory it's the purview of the police department, but it's not happening. So I was wondering if that's something that, I don't know if that's something you take on, or if you've thought about how to slow people down, or if that's, anyway, that's a question. Thank you.
Thanks, Robert, for representing the commission. I'm also on the commission, and the fourth bullet from the end, we should add avenues at the end. It talks about Marin and Cornell. It should be avenues, just to be very clear, since schools are named in the item. You know, it is a long list, and it turns out that most of these things do come up in a 2-year period on the Traffic and Safety Commission. We did attempt to address the paving and lighting item. We could certainly work out some better wording on that. It is on our minds, and we've been looking for ways to evaluate lighting and looking for ways to prioritize lighting, and would love to do that.
Great.
As for the parking survey, it's the information we have. We got to work with what we have. We'd love to have more information about how parking is used. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, then let's come back. It looks like you want to speak.
Yeah,
sure.
I'd be happy to. Thank you, if I may. I think one thing we can do is we can go back and work with staff. There is a lot here in this document. We can prioritize with the strategic plan initiatives that the city has set forth. I think it's, and maybe some things may not completely fall off the list, but at least we can better organize them towards the strategic plan, as well as prioritize them so that we can see which ones are more relevant to the strategic plan and which ones are not. With regard to pavement, we're going through those discussions right now, and that's how that earlier resolution had come up, is looking at the PCI and StreetSaver and seeing if that's the most effective way that tool is used for us to measure the quality of our roadways. So I think there is some progress being made there. And as Commissioner McCroskey had mentioned, I think lighting is one that it always comes up nearly every meeting, either in public comments or in related to another project. So that is something that we do want to take on if we can get a plan and then also evaluate what the lighting conditions are out there. So start some sort of baseline.
Thank you. So, yeah.
Well, I suppose I should put my money where my mouth is. If a subcommittee would be formed of this council, I would suggest that Vice Mayor McQuaid is on it because she served for many years on the Traffic and Safety Commission, assuming she's interested in all her spare time. I would also be happy to serve since I started this conversation. I think we could use some staff people and probably Robert himself, and we could sit in a room and eat pizza and drink beer and hash this out.
Beer will help. Thank you.
I'm not sure beer is covered under the Brown Act.
All right, well, I would entertain a motion to form a subcommittee. Is that, does that reflect what council members see is needed here?
I'm not sure we need a subcommittee. I think what was just suggested, that if the Transportation Commission could kind of reorganize this a bit and show that you are addressing some of our strategic plan initiatives, I think it'd be fine. I sort of agree with this idea that there is such a long list there. It does seem a little disorganized, and I think you could prioritize it in a way, and I think they'd be capable of doing it. I think we have, as was pointed out, we have a pretty amazing number of members on the Transportation Commission in terms of expertise. So I suspect they could be doing that. I also wanted to mention there was a comment on parking. When we adopted our new general plan, the old general plan from years ago had a parking lot was part of it, that we should have as it should be one of our goals is to build a parking lot in Albany, somewhere maybe on the site behind the theater. We dropped that. I think it's all changing. Tonight we passed 2 ordinances, if anyone paid attention to the consent calendar, both of which will probably end up losing parking, but they'll be we'll be setting aside space in some houses for blue curb for people that have disabilities. And also, if you request having on either side of your driveway painted red so you can go more easily in and out, these are safety concerns. And it's true, parking is an issue, and it's probably going to get worse before it gets better. I think that's not just true in Albany. I think that's true just about anywhere. Are
you suggesting they should be thinking about more parking, or?
No, I don't. I think we should be thinking about what we do beyond parking. Essentially, in other words, we can't make space where we don't have it, and we need a certain amount of space for other forms of transportation, pedestrians, cyclists, all multimodal forms. So, at least as far as for me, and I think it has been for the council in general, we're less concerned about parking than what they may have been in Albany 20 years ago.
I think when we hear the term parking management, it means different things to different people. Sure. I think that businesses and residents who are concerned about parking getting tighter mean let's manage our parking in such a way that we have more of it. Whereas transportation planners tend to look at it in terms of monetizing and how can we charge for parking and get people to conserve it and maybe have less of it. So different people mean different things when they talk about parking management. But be that as it may, I'd still probably say that paving is an awfully big issue. Councilmember Pilch.
I'm fine with sending this back to the commission for rework. I don't think we need to go to a subcommittee to manage that process unless they come back with something that we like even less. So why don't we give them a chance first to work on this? And since it was brought up, I can't help myself, but parking, what you want in terms of parking is you want available spaces. So if we get to the point where we're such a successful community that it really gets tight, you do monetize, you pay a price for parking so that you encourage empty spaces so that people who will pay that price can drive in and park. So I think that's another direction we would go, neighborhood parking permits and parking meters. But anyway, back to the important thing, let's give the commission a chance.
Mayor.
Yes.
I would at least like to have one meeting that's more concise where I can go through this line by line without keeping all these people here and waiting, so I can discuss this in more detail, because I have many reservations about this. So I would like my concerns heard. It doesn't have to be a subcommittee, it can be a meeting. I don't really care about how often we meet, but at least once.
Be fine.
How would you feel about meeting with
I'd be happy to, yeah, to
Councilmember
meet
Barnes,
with.
and perhaps a staff person could attend that meeting as well to be a resource. Does that work for everybody?
Works for
Okay,
me.
let's make that happen. Let's refer, I'm going to propose we refer then our comments back to the Transportation Committee. We won't approve the work plan at this time. We'll ask you to come back.
That sounds great.
And take the time that you need to, okay.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, and
Council.
I'm sorry, it's a tough one.
No, appreciate it.
But you
Appreciate
did
the
a
feedback.
wonderful job, and you do a wonderful job on the commission, and I'm very grateful that we have the connection through with AC Transit, which is so important for so many of our residents. Thank you all.
Thank you. Appreciate the
All
comments.
right.
Could I have a motion for approving the CMAQ work plan?
For approval of CMAQ, we need a motion for approval of the Community Media Advisory Commission.
So moved.
Second.
Councilmember Barnes?
Yes.
Councilmember Moss?
Yes.
Councilmember Pilch?
Yes.
Vice Mayor McQuay?
Yes.
Mayor Nason?
Yes. And I think that we can simply, as a matter of direction, leave alone the Transportation Commission. Okay, so we are back to the agenda. We have completed the work plans, and we are ready to go to what most people are here for, I believe, our public hearing. Item 9-1, zoning classification establishment at Cleveland Avenue and Washington Avenue. First reading.
Yes.
May we have a staff report, please?
Yes. Good evening. Before you tonight is the first reading for the zoning classification establishment for Cleveland and Washington Avenue. Just to give you some background, the subject property is located at the northeastern corner of Cleveland and Washington Avenues and extends to Pierce Street. The site's approximately 4.45 acres in size and was previously a Caltrans facility which had ramping infrastructure. Caltrans vacated the use of the property when the freeway was realigned. And here's a context map, it's actually the assessor's parcel map, but it's intended to capture the entirety of the site. So this is Washington for context, Cleveland, and then Pierce Street here. So the city acquired the property in 2012 and currently owns the property in its entirety, and most recently developed the upper portion as Peggy Thompson Pierce Street Park. In looking through old staff reports, there were several phases that were identified for improvements to the park. So the phase one included Pierce Street Plaza, sidewalk, site grading, and erosion control. Phase 1A was a road widening and crosswalk. Phase 2 includes a park access ramp, lower plaza, and multi-use field and landscaping. Phase 3A is a playground and pathway, and Phase 3B is a multi-use pathway and related lighting. When the general plan was prepared a few years ago, it identified the land use classifications for the site as split. So the R3 high-density residential is what is continuous along the Washington side, and the upper portion is identified as open space within the general plan. As I noted, this was done as part of the general plan, which was approved in 2016. And the intent behind the R3 density designation was to make it continuous with existing zoning and land use on Washington. And this corresponds to park and open space facilities for that upper portion of the site where Peggy Thompson Pierce Street Park is. And so just to give you the visual, this is the general plan land use map. So you can see here that this lower portion is high density residential and this upper portion is parks and open space. And so just to put it in context of the zoning map, the discussion and action before you tonight is to amend this map. So what your initial reading would do would assign zoning classifications to that parcel. So this map would actually be amended to reflect those zoning and land use classifications. So in terms of residential development, the proposed site is 1.13 acres. We are currently under negotiations with Satellite Affordable Housing Associates for an affordable housing development. We are ongoing in terms of our negotiations with them, and at this time, they have not filed a formal application. So we're not before you tonight with plans in a development application. We're simply before you tonight with the zoning classification. And this exhibit is included in your packet. This shows the proposed property line. So this space, this lower portion, the 1.13 acres would be R3, and this upper portion would be PF Public Facilities, which is the corresponding zoning designation for parks and open space. And just to give you a snapshot of what the R3 zoning designation looks like in the zoning code, it provides opportunities for a high-density residential development characterized by a mix of housing types, including townhouses, duplex apartments, and condominiums subject to appropriate standards. Similarly, the PF district specifically calls out parks. I'm not going to go through the full text of this, but I did want to identify that parks is contained within the definition because it doesn't directly correspond to parks and open space. You have to identify the language specifically. In terms of the CEQA review, there was an environmental impact report that was prepared for the 2035 general plan. It was adopted by the City Council on April 18th, 2016. When that EIR was prepared, it analyzed the potential land use changes and future development that could occur on site based on the land use classifications and subsequent zoning. So as part of your review tonight, we have provided supplemental analysis. We worked with our external CEQA legal counsel on this, which effectively allows findings to be made based on the original EIR that was approved and certified that identifies that there hasn't been any change or new information which has been identified subsequent to that act in 2016. The Planning Commission adopted 3 separate resolutions. The initial resolution is a resolution of intention, which is required by the code to initiate any code change, be it in Chapter 20 or an amendment to the map. They then, in their second act, adopted a resolution specific to those CEQA findings, and then ultimately adopted a resolution forwarding a recommendation to Council to establish the zoning classifications consistent with the general plan. You received correspondence last week after the packet was released, and obviously you'll hear some of that tonight in regards to this, this request. With that, we would recommend that you open up the public hearing, take public testimony, and then if you're ready to take action tonight, there are 2 actions before you. The first is to adopt Resolution 2019-30, which affirms those findings of consistency pursuant to CEQA. And then the second item is to introduce for first reading ordinance 2019-06, which would establish zoning classifications consistent with the general plan land use map.
Thank you. Now we're gonna make the distinction between questions and comments. Do people have questions for Ms. Hirsch right now? Okay, seeing none, we will open the public hearing.
I'll call 3 at a time. Maria Sabe and Omar Sabe and Kevin Fong.
And before we begin, I'm going to reiterate again, we don't clap, we don't boo, we listen quietly and respectfully to each person and give everyone the courtesy to express opposing opinions. Thank you.
So we are here today opposing the zoning of R3 on Cleveland and Washington, and I just wanted to reiterate our experience. I believe that most of you heard it earlier today, but wanted to say that we did receive a letter from Saha on April 10th saying that they were selected by the City of Albany to explore 60 affordable housing apartment homes that they were planning on having an open house to engage community stakeholders, that they were anticipating applying for planning approvals from the City of Albany in the summer of 2019, with construction starting as early as 2021. So I'm a little confused as to, you know, there not being any plans in place when we already received a letter like this. And keep in mind that we received this letter and all of this information from a company prior to any zoning talk. So this is very concerning. We attended the planning and zoning meeting, and at this meeting we mentioned this letter. We mentioned our concern with our neighbors not receiving proper notice. We mentioned our concern with possibly not having received that SAHA letter, so our neighbors not being aware that this was going on. At this meeting, Ms. Hirsch and the committee stated that there were no plans, no contracts, that this was just a recommendation, you know, nothing's happening, but again, we got this letter. And then later on in the meeting, Ms. Hirsch said that SAHA does have exclusive developing rights with the City of Albany, and that my husband and I should talk to SAHA to ask questions about the proposed project of the 60 units. So I don't understand, again, how do we talk to somebody if there are no plans? The minutes of the meeting do state that a housing developer is in negotiations with the City of Albany. The minutes also state that the park has been constructed and the park has not been fully constructed. It's a really small fraction of what was originally envisioned, and the residents of Albany have been supporting a park in this parcel since 1991. There were plenty of alternatives presented to the council, which included meditation areas, passive use of fields, planting areas, a dog park, maybe a skate park, amongst other ideas, and we believe that the park has not been completed and needs to be completed. Then on May 5th, we found out that there was going to be a closed meeting to talk about negotiation of the price in terms of the sale of this land. Again, prior to zoning, prior to having this conversation, which we felt like was very not transparent at all with the community, and prior to even knowing whether the rezoning would be approved, after we were told that nothing was set in stone, that this was just plans, and that this was simply a recommendation. So we're very concerned.
Thank you.
Omar Saba, resident at 700 Washington Avenue. I want to echo my wife that we are very concerned, and we do not feel like a change into high-density residential from the full park that was promised to the groups here since 1991. They've been fighting to make that happen. I have read the plan, the Chapter 6 Parks and Recreation. I've read the CEQA section. I've read the general plan, and I just want to read a couple of excerpts out of this general plan that I find extremely interesting. In this plan, park recreations and open space elements, Pierce Street Park neighborhood, 4.1 acres. As long as that stays at 4.1 acres, I'm comfortable. If it doesn't, then I'm not. That's what was promised to the community, and that's what we have in our general plan to break up and say what our classifications are and the per capita service standards. So the addition of 1,800 residents as envisioned by the general plan would translate into a need for about 4.2 acres of additional active parkland if the existing ratio of 2.31 acres per 1,000 residents is maintained. Most of this need will be met through the addition of a 4.1 acre neighborhood park. The city's park recreation and open space master plan also calls for improvements to the key route median area. The Pierce Street Park just north of Calhoun Street. So this park is expected to be made in this general plan to meet your per capita service standards. Moving on, in this general plan, some parks of Albany do not meet this standard. This is from the Albany 2035 general plan. Per capita acreage standards are supplemented by distance standards. In other words, the distance a resident has to walk, bike, or drive to reach a park, and standards for specific types of facilities. The National Recreation and Park Association, NRPA, has a guideline that all residents should be within a half a mile of a neighborhood or community park. Some parts of Albany do not meet this standard, including the high-density areas along Pierce Street and the area area east side of Albany Hill. Construction of the new Pierce Street Park should address this deficiency. This is what the plan is. This is what you guys agreed to. The idea was that 4.1 acres were going to be made park. I'm not opposed to low-income housing or any type of housing. I get it. But 60 units with one parking space per unit, we can't park on in our neighborhood now. All right, it's not going to make sense. I've spoken to the police department. I've spoken to the fire department. I just spoke to the chief outside right now. He laughed at me when I said 60 units. So I think that we need to be more realistic with where we're putting these things. You want to put 60 units on top of a freeway and a train rail station, right? It's unrealistic. We got to rethink this. Thank you.
Thank you.
After Kevin will be Jeff Armstrong, Chris, and Beth Thompson.
Hello, everybody. My name is Kevin Fong, and we live in the house of 707 Washington Street, and I think that our family is the most impacted because our house is just right adjacent to the subject lot. When we moved into the city, in 2014, we were informed or under the impression that right next to our house, the land is going to be built with a full park. Okay, and that's why we decided to move into Albany, and then we thought that we are willing to live there. But all of a sudden, the plan has changed, okay, which is what a surprise to us, because I thought that, 2 years ago, we were so happy to see the progress was initiated to build a park, but all of a sudden, the park, half of the park was built, and then now, the lot that is adjacent to my house is being used as a yard, with the big trucks and, service trucks that's coming in on every morning. So starting 7 o'clock, we see that trucks, and we are so annoyed by the noise and dust, okay? But furthermore, I don't think that, building a 60-unit, affordable housing there is feasible, because we see very limited parking space, and we see the congested traffic every morning, okay? It's dangerous too. And, 2 years ago, when we applied to extend our house, we even needed to pay the city to approve us to use the driveway, okay, in front of our house as an additional parking space. So you can see that the parking space is very limited. And furthermore, I don't think that buildings, a high-rise building, a condensed apartment building, right next to the freeway and right next to the track is very feasible, because I don't think that the residents will be living there happily, because we are already suffered by the noise generated by the cars on the freeway, and also by the trains that pass by almost every midnight. Okay, so bringing a high-density house apartment building, right next, even really closer to the freeway and closer to the track. I cannot imagine, even for affordable housing residents, I cannot imagine how they can live in such a building.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you. I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to speak today. Thank you very much. My name is Jeff Armstrong. My family has resided in Albany on Pierce Street for almost 100 years. I'd like to start by saying how disappointed I am with the city that we are here again discussing the Peggy Thompson Pierce Street Park, when this issue was resolved over 30 years of for almost 30 years of meetings we've had with the city and with Caltrans. First and foremost, I'm not against affordable housing. My family is low income according to Albany standards. With that being said, I don't believe that my family would even have access to any of these units. I've been told that there may be as few as 4 to 6 units available as BMR units out of the 60 plus that are going to be built. I do not know how this would rectify in solving the housing crisis in Albany. It would appear to me this is more luxury housing to bring in more revenue for the city under the false pretense of calling it low-income housing. I do not understand how we can take that land that was designated to a park, that 4 acres that was designated to a park, and put in more luxury housing. Peggy Thompson herself would be disappointed. She knew the desperate need of a park for the resident families where they could feel safe and have a place to play that was within walking distance of their home. Because the East Shore neighborhood of Albany did not have a park, the Thompson family allowed the children in the neighborhood to use their backyard for a safe place to play. I know this because my brothers and I probably spent 1,000 hours back there playing wiffle ball and basketball. The Thompson family and Peggy Thompson, they practiced what they preached. This park also serves a purpose to the environment. The planting of trees will help improve air quality by filtering dust and pollutants from the air, as well as providing oxygen. This is something that is essential to this area, as there are 2 freeways and a train that meet in a triangle right there. I think we need to keep Albany green. Peggy worked tirelessly with city agencies as well as friends and neighbors, as you can see out here. And I don't know if you could have a more diverse group of people, at least on this side of the room, I don't know if you could have a more diverse group of people than you have over here right now. Again, I am not against affordable housing. It comes down to the location of the project. There are other areas this project could and should be located, and to keep the park as it originally intended and agreed upon by Caltrans and the city for almost 30 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Chris Seeley. I live up on Gateview. So when I get one of these cards in the mail, it really strikes fear in my heart, because usually it means what's on this is going to happen. And it usually has a big impact. You know, I live below San Pablo, and I don't think we're always treated exactly as fairly as the other part of of Albany. So this is really going to impact the density on this in this area. I mean, we already have really narrow streets. We have a lot of traffic. It's very difficult to get around. So 66 units is a huge amount, and is there going to even be sufficient parking? So it's really difficult when I went to Zoning and Planning Commission, and it seemed like this was already rolling along. It sounded like they were talking to some company and things were starting to happen before anything had been changed. So I'm hoping this will be different than other times when I've been involved and receive one of these cards that seems to be just saying, this is how it's going to happen. Thanks.
Thank you.
After Beth Thompson will be Jackie Armstrong and Jim Beller and Jim Thompson.
Hi, I'm Beth Thompson, and I am going to be sharing a letter with you that I believe, I'm going to be reading it out loud to you all. I believe that the council has been given a copy of this, and these are notes, handwritten notes from Peggy Thompson, my mother-in-law, for whom the park is named. So she says, I realized after the last council meeting that some council members are unaware of the city's history relating to Pierce Street Park. I have a chronology of the city's involvement since 1991, when other Albany residents and I attended the first city-sponsored meetings where Caltrans representatives came to make presentations about the I-80 freeway widening. In exchange for closure of the Pierce Street off-ramp, Caltrans offered its neighbors through the city 3/4 acre pocket park and $353,000 to develop the park. Additionally, neighbors, by federal law, were offered a vote on whether to have a sound wall. The sound wall cut through the current 4.5 acre park diagonally from Pierce Street to Washington and Cleveland. The city conducted the vote and retained the postcard ballots. When Caltrans told neighbors at city-sponsored meetings in the year 2000 that it would transfer the larger 4.5 acre property to the city if they voted away the sound wall, neighbors voted to give up the sound wall in a second city-conducted vote. Unfortunately, Caltrans did not honor the commitment, so the city began more negotiations with Caltrans and worked with our state legislators. Some of the previous mayors who worked with the neighbors, actually she gives a long list, I'm not going to read them all, and you all know them all probably, very active members. As council moves forward on Pierce Street Park, my neighbors and I want you to understand some of the history of the city's involvement with neighbors in Caltrans to bring the park to fruition. I ask you to please read the chronology I'm providing you tonight and to speak with city employees, my neighbors, and me about the park's history. And then there's a whole chronology, which I also think that you have gotten, that dates back to 1991 through 2017, and that was even after they started talking about it. So As an Albany homeowner on Pierce Street, I encourage the council to listen to its citizens, specifically the Pierce Street, Washington Street, and Calhoun neighbors, and most especially the people that have worked on the Peggy Thompson Pierce Street Park for 20 to 30 years. I also request that the park be finished as it was designated so that Albany can know that they can fulfill their commitment that they agreed to, and to please not move forward on this zoning change. Thank you.
Thank you.
Greetings. I'm Jackie Armstrong. I've lived on Pierce Street 84 years. My father bought the house. It's 100 years old. I live with I have 2 sons and a grandson that live in the house. Some of us are low income, so it works fine for us. I oppose the zoning of the Pierce Street parcel into anything other than a public facility PF zone. I oppose the following: Adoption Resolution 2019-30, 2019-06, 2019-04, 2019-05, and 2019-06. I've repeated that. I grew up there. I played in the street. I played in parks. I didn't play in parks, excuse me. I played in lots because we didn't have a park. My sons grew up there. You heard their story. They played in the street until the Thompson family moved in, and they were invited to play in their wonderful backyard, which had a basketball court. They played at the lab, the Western Regional Laboratory at the end of Pierce Street, which now children cannot play there. But we were so fortunate when Caltrans did the new freeway. We were approached by Caltrans, do we want a sawmill or would we like a park? We went for the park. Of course, that became a long process because we ended up having to negotiate with Caltrans until 2012, and we were able to get the park. For a short time, the federal government shut us down. They said we had endangered species plants. That was only 2 years. Then after 2 years, we were able to develop the park, and we started with the children's area. We kept waiting for the rest of the development. It was always referred to in, my documentations. I have a nice box here, full of documentation from so many years. I mean, we're talking about, well, now it's 29 years. So I sometimes lose my memory, but anyway, I want to elaborate that the Pierce Street Park was always addressed in all of our documentation as a Pierce Street Park project, or the Pierce Street Park, always the Pierce Street Park. Although it would say the Pierce Street Park from Pierce Street to Cleveland to Washington, the Pierce Street Park, that's 4.5 acres. Federal government says our size community, because we have lots of high-rise and development, deserve a 4.5 acre park. I oppose the high-rise development, and I support keeping the park.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim Beller. I work with a lot of homeless people around Albany and Berkeley. In volunteering at the Pathways Stair Center in Berkeley, we met a young woman, Melinda Rogers, and her little terrier, Giggles. We had an arrangement with our friend Patricia Mama Bear to take care of her dog if she had to go into the hospital. And Melinda, who helped me out a lot with Mama Bear, asked if we would do the same for her and Giggles. So we had him most of February, and we got to know Melinda a little bit better through a few crises, combinations of asthma and depression. Her most recent place to stay was at the Casa Maria in Oakland, which is a place where people in psychiatric crises can go temporarily. But she did feel like she was being driven out of there by her roommate, and she left last week and moved back to a tent in a park at 3rd and Peralta. I saw Melinda last Thursday. We went for a walk with our dogs in Albany Park. and she told me she did have a place to keep her stuff, and I wasn't too worried about her. Sunday afternoon, I got a phone call from the fire department in Oakland, and they asked me if I knew Giggles. And I said, yes, what's this about? And they told me they had just found Melinda dead in her tent at the corner of 3rd and Peralta. They had my phone number on a little tag I had put on Giggles last time he had been staying at our house, and miraculously, really was a miracle. As we left the fire station with Giggles, he shook his head and the tag went flying off. But he had it when he needed to have it. The fire people told me that there weren't any signs of trauma in Melinda's tent, and there weren't any signs of heroin or paraphernalia. I appreciate that our city government is increasing its commitment to provide services for very low-income community members, and I'm happy that Albany has an entirely low and very low-income housing project to consider. I was surprised by the size and the passion of the opposition to this project, and how easily it seemed to be marshaled, complete with T-shirts. One woman I heard about visited my wife's church and said that she would fight to the death for a basketball court at Solano and Cleveland. Please appreciate the fact that some people are fighting to the death for housing. Thank you.
Thank you.
After Jim would be Ken McCroskey, Robert Erhammer, and Rosa Jaramillo.
Hi, I am Jim Thompson. I am son of former Mayor Peggy Thompson, obviously namesake of Peggy Thompson Park. Greetings to members of the council. Good to see you all. Thank you for having me. 3 quick points. Of course, I strongly encourage the council to not go forward with this project, not go forward with this zoning change, and really honor the intent and the spirit of what Pierce Street Park was acquired for. Second point, I think it's a mistake to add more density. Albany made a huge mistake when they allowed the very high towers at the end of Pierce Street Park, or end of Pierce Street, excuse me. They recognize that the next set of towers are much lower, but now we're going to add even more density to a super dense area, narrow streets, there's no parking, and now we have a park with a bunch of kids, and that whole thing just makes me super nervous. 3, I completely understand the need for low-income housing, and I'm very sorry for your loss. But there's also a really important need in this community, and I spoke to this here before, about preserving green space and having green space. And once it's gone, and it is diminishing here, and it's really important that we respect the environment here in Albany. And the last thing I would say, as elected officials, I look to you to represent the people of Albany, and not potential future people of Albany, the people who are here now, who are representing, the community, and so I really want to make that point. And then I just want to say I stand with my neighbors, and again, strongly encourage you to not move forward with this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Ken McCroskey, speaking for myself. I support low-income and entry-level housing in general and specifically. I support it in my neighborhood. I live in the 800 block of Santa Fe, and I think Solano Avenue should support more multi-level housing and higher density. So I will walk my walk and support that in my neighborhood. And just because I'm a stroll and roll, I have to mention that, I'm looking forward to a completion of a bike path in this area, and hopefully we can include those plans with any development on the corner. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Robert Erhammer, 745 Pierce Street. I also oppose any change of the ordinances for rezoning Pierce Street Park, or to zone the Pierce Street parcels anything other than public facilities. Basically, since 2012, when the city acquired the property, it's been de facto a public facility. And first, it was with a park and a bicycle path, as was the original idea, and a maintenance center. The maintenance center fell through, and since that time, it's that portion of it, which is at Pierce, which is at Washington and Cleveland, has basically been used as a staging area for various projects going on around the city. As has been mentioned by several of my neighbors, the 2035 general plan is basically, there's some inconsistencies with that and the zoning ordinance that you have up here, which is 2019-06, particularly involving the per capita requirements for park and for the proximity to the high-density area west side of Albany Hill, which has well over 2,000 residents. And with 2,000 plus residents, or say 3,000 residents, you need an acreage of about 4 to 4.5 acres of park. And that would fill out the whole parcel as it stands now. And so I propose, and I submit to you, that you should reject the idea of zoning it anything other than Pierce Street parcel, the public facilities parcel. Thank you.
Thank you.
After Rosa would be Ian McLeod.
Hi, my name is Rosa Jaramillo. I have a family daycare in Washington, 718 Washington. I'm working there for almost 30 years. And since I started paying taxes for that park, the kids keep asking, where is the park? And when I take them to the park as now, they say, is this what is the park? So kids who already grow up come back and ask me, where is the park? The traffic is bad. Too many times I have to stand up in the middle of the street asking the people to stop, to remember they was little kids. And they don't stop. They go around us, 10 kids walking, 2 grown-ups with them. So this is not fair for the kids. We need free places, have happy kids, and they need this park. And I support my neighbors. Like I said, I live in that house 30 years, and I'm waiting for the park for a long time. So I really thank you for listening, and hopefully you listen to us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, council, staff, members of the public. My name is Ian McLeod. I'm a planning and zoning commissioner. I'm here to speak on behalf of adopting this ordinance. I really support changing the zoning in this case. Providing better housing, more housing options is a critical need for Albany and for the state in general and for the local Bay Area economy. We need to provide more housing. You've seen homeless people on the street. It's all related. If we don't have housing here, it puts people on the street. And we have to make more housing available and housing more affordable. Every community has to do its part. We're not immune. We're not different from some other place that can say we can't have that here. So it's a critical need for the city and for the state, and I support it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Margie Marks. First, I wanted to really thank the City Council. I think it took a lot of guts to put this proposal out there, and I think it's the best thing that's happened in Albany in all 35 years I've lived here, and I'm really proud of the council for putting this out into the public, whatever happens with it. I was informed by a realtor in Albany recently that no home had sold in Albany for less than $1 million since the first of the year, and this included the 2-bedroom, 1-bath fixer-upper under the BART tracks. I think that we're kind of in a struggle for what kind of community do we want to have here, and I understand there are only 3 residents that get Section 8 housing in Albany. That's nothing. As a city council, I know you're trying to juggle so many things, open space, the promises that were made for this park. You also have made a commitment to the state to put out so many housing units that are below market rate. And I would really like you to go forward with this project. I think that Saha has a proven track record. It has a really great reputation, so you've chosen a really first-rate company to work with on this. And I would like you to consider giving maybe 10% of these apartments to teachers who teach in the Albany schools and can't afford to live here, and maybe just putting 10% aside for teachers. I'd say first responders, but I think police and fire probably make too much money to meet the income requirements. So I'd like you to consider giving something to teachers who teach in our city. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Alan?
Alan Merritt, Albany resident and a member of Diverse Housing Working Group. Also, I serve with CARES at the Senior Center, giving referrals to people who are facing homelessness in Albany. Councilman Barnes, I think it was, mentioned SB 50. And SB 50 is the state coming down with a hammer on people in cities who are not providing affordable housing as required by the state. We have a 300-unit affordable housing requirement in our general plan as a part of our housing element. And we've done very little to meet those needs. This is an opportunity to do so. And I appreciate your effort, Planning and Zoning Commission's effort to do so. I also served on the City Council when the Pierce Street and people came to campaign for their park. And what a magnificent process that was. I served with Peggy on the school board, and I consider her a very special friend still, even though she's left us. But times change, and in the last 5 or 10 years, this homeless situation, affordable housing, is a disaster. And if we don't solve our problem locally, the state's going to come down on us and mandate that we provide affordable housing. The Peggy Thompson Pierce Street Park is currently 3+ acres. And this project asks for 1 acre adjacent to the park for meeting our affordable housing needs. And to me, affordable housing means rents from $0 to, say, $1,500 a month. The project, as I understand it, is going to provide housing at least preliminarily for $400 to $1,500 a month, on up to very expensive apartments, but it's not going to be a luxury apartment building. We've heard other testimony, what it's like to be a homeless person. I think our community can be sensitive to those needs as well as our needs for park and open space. So I very much support this project and the new zoning. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think this may be a first. I support the council also, so I never thought those words would come out of my mouth. I'm trying to figure out how that happened to me.
Neither did we.
I feel for the residents of that area. I appreciate the stories you've told, and if it weren't for my concern, not just for the fact that there are people experiencing homelessness, people that have no place to live, that can't afford to stay in Albany or can't afford to live in Albany unless they live on the streets. Now they can't even stay in their RVs. I think I would be maybe more sympathetic. Some of the concerns you've expressed, I think that the noise, for example, that was talked about with the trains and the freeway, I think double pane glass windows would probably help a lot with that. I don't know if there's a plan to have a parking garage below the housing, but I would hope that there would be, in which case a lot of the concerns about the on-street parking would be addressed. I'm glad that there's still going to be a park. And for the person who talked about having childcare, it was you, and people not stopping, that's happening all over Albany. I just want you to know it's not just my street. People constantly, I walk down I live near Washington and Stanage, and when I cross, cars literally, there's a four-way stop. It doesn't matter if I'm in the middle of the street. They literally drive by me and drive around me, just like what you're seeing. It's happening everywhere. So it's not just your area. But I feel for you. But I also was very involved in creating the housing element in the general plan because Albany hadn't had a housing element in compliance for many, many years, and there was nothing about the fact that we need to provide housing for people with extremely low incomes and low incomes. And it's, as Alan Maris said, it's in the plan, and we are not living up to our required amount. I think we've done zero in terms of extremely low, and we need to address that. And I really like the way Alan put it, that times change. And it's great that you will have a park. I'm sorry it's not exactly what you want, but I hope that the city will move forward. And I also hope that the city will make sure that the housing, there is sufficient extremely low housing as part of the housing development. Thank you.
Thank you. Sure.
Just briefly, oh, sorry.
Do we have another commenter who has turned in a card, or, okay, go right ahead, David.
I just wanted to say, appreciating the folks from Pierce Street, I have to come down with that I feel we need as a city to take action on making this affordable housing, and we missed our opportunities, and I agree with the statement supporting that and all the rationale for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have another speaker?
Ma'am?
Ma'am? I don't want to close. Yep, please come up.
My name is Ernestine Ween. I live in El Cerrito, California. I don't live in Albany, but we do need parks for our children. And in our city, in El Cerrito, they're building a lot of apartments and buildings for low-income people. It's not very far from Albany, and they are building a lot of them for low income. And we do need parks for our children. So please consider. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, how are you? I am Jose with Jose Jaramillo. I live at Washington 718, and I completely opposed to your project, and I support my neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comment? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing and bring it back to council. Comments? Well, I'll start off. Okay, go ahead.
If nobody else wants to jump in here, yeah, it's hard to jump in. Yeah, we have two things that are great things. This idea of open space and this idea that we need more housing. I suspect everybody in the vicinity of the Pierce Street Park probably realizes that housing is a crisis. It's a crisis in Albany. It's a crisis throughout the Bay Area. And yet, I also agree with this idea that we have to take some spaces and set them aside for parks, for places for kids to play. And here we have these two things that are both sort of wants in conflict with each other. So it makes it really difficult, and makes it difficult, for us to rule on these kind of things. when I first ran for council in 2012, I ran with the backing of a group that was supporting open space at the bulb. So I think I have a sense of what this idea that we need to have open space along the shoreline and what the benefits of that kind of space is. But I've also, in the time that I've lived in Albany, I've seen what, our family could afford in the 90s. Now we can't afford to buy our own house anymore, and I think that might be true of a lot of the folks that have gotten up and spoken tonight. It's absurd, and it's essentially making our community a very slow, gradually, but making it just a place for only upper income people to live, and it's changing our character very quickly. I supported, when it came before me either on planning and zoning or while I was on the council, efforts to make the Pierce Street, the former Caltrans area, into some kind of park space that could be used by not just the people in that neighborhood, but by the whole city. In fact, like most of our parks, they'll be used by not just Albanians, they'll be used by people that come from El Cerrito, from Berkeley, wherever. You can't stop that, and it's not a bad thing. Tonight, I think we can continue to make that Pierce Street Park the gem that I think it's going to be. It's going to take more work and more effort. But this section of property that was originally planned to be a public works center that didn't work out, I don't think is a great addition to that park. I think we can work with what we have in the current park space and make it into something special. But we do need housing, and in particular, we need housing for people with lower incomes, so they're not totally priced out. I love the idea that came up at one point of some sort of set aside for teachers. We used to be a community of teachers. Now, very few of the teachers, if they didn't buy in 20 or 30 years ago, can't afford to live here. They can work in our schools, but they have to go live elsewhere, and that's not a good situation. The other comment, Alan Maris brought up SB 50 is a bill that's coming down from Sacramento in one form or another. SB 50 is the tip of the iceberg. There's many other bills that are coming out of Sacramento, and it's all around this idea that we need to produce more housing. Particularly for low income, but I personally feel that we need to produce housing for everybody, including middle class housing. Maybe not in Albany particularly, but in the Bay Area, we need housing for everybody. This is one of the few opportunities we have at the moment to do something is on this lot that's a very hard lot to build on, and it's got a slope on it, so how useful it would be for a place, for a park, I'm not so sure. And I think this is a good project, so I'm in support tonight.
Thank you. Could I ask the staff, please, to clarify, there have been a few factual matters that have come up that I think are important for people to know the correct information. And I'm thinking particularly the number of units, the eligible incomes to rent units there, and the levels of rent.
Yeah.
At
this stage, a lot of that information is preliminary. Right now, I think the unit count is approximately around 60 units that are being considered. In terms of the income levels, that's kind of still to be determined.
But I was under the impression we were talking about a 100% below market rate.
That's absolutely correct. It's
complex.
100% below market rate.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
I have comments.
Yeah.
Nick has comments. Who goes first, Nick? I can be very brief. I'll second the comments of both the previous council members who spoke that this is absolutely an affordable project, and I agree with Councilmember Moss that we're making the right trade-off here. Housing is absolutely a crisis, and affordable housing even more so, and we have to do our part as a city. We're barely doing our part in general in housing, so I think we are pleased to be able to do something here, especially for affordable housing, and I think this is the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I made a lot of notes, so let me get started. So first, I want to say as a council member, I'm all surprised that people have such strong feelings and come to strong conclusions based on not very much information, because I don't have much more information than you. I have a little bit more, but not a lot more. And I don't know what I think of this project yet. And we will get a chance soon on May 23rd there at 6 at
the community center.
The community center. There's going to be a big open house and a discussion of this project, where there'll be more photos and images, and people can really get a sense of what it looks like. Point number 2, I first got on the council in 2012. In 2011, though, I was starting to come to meetings. It was Peggy Thompson and I were allies when I was first on the council. I'm still very angry with her that she died on me. So I remember that era very well. First thing, when I first got involved with this issue, that little section down there on the corner of Cleveland and Washington was going to be our public works center. So to me, that little section was never programmed in the time when I started on the council and during the time I've been on the council to be part of the park. And I think one assumption some of the neighbors are making here is something you ought to consider, and that is, even if we don't put housing in that spot, it's likely that we'll never become part of the park anyway, because it's too hard a corner of property to work with, and it could end up just being a staging area for sewer projects or something else. So don't necessarily assume that you're giving up that corner, because maybe that corner was never yours to lose to start with. That's been my perception since I've been on the council. Something else you need to understand, everybody in Albany paid for that park. I know the folks who live down there have a particular sense of ownership about that piece of land, because you worked on it since around 1991. And by the way, Mr. Armstrong, you were annoyed a little earlier in the day when Peggy and Rochelle turned and smiled at each other when you were speaking before closed session. And that's because you made the statement that none of us were here when you started working on the park in 91. Actually, I had showed up as a grad student in 89, and those two were born in Albany. So that was why they turned and smiled at each other. So I just want to clarify that.
Can I clarify my statement since you're bringing up my name and calling me out in front of the whole place?
Maybe later. Let me finish. This is the time for the council to.
Yeah, let's.
I mean, I'm happy for you.
Let's put this piece of it behind us. Please
Okay.
continue.
So everybody in town paid for the park. We had a hard time getting some of the money because of the demise of the redevelopment funding mechanism. But we basically clawed the money back from the state. We got the money. We were able to complete the purchase of the park. But it's the city's park. It doesn't belong to any subset of people in the park. The park belongs to all the citizens of Albany. Now, here's where I differ with everyone else on this project. When I drive down Pierce Street Park, or I drive down Pierce Street, I'm disappointed with what I see in that park. I think it looks a little neglected. I think even though the playground equipment is nice, there's not as many kids down there as I would like to see. And it occurred to me, all politics aside, about homelessness and SB 50, a bill which I dislike, by the way, that it would be fun if we could have more kids and more sense of community down in that corner, and that there could be a little more housing or something going on down there to make the park more lively. So it had occurred to me on those occasions when I drive down Pierce Street, wouldn't it be nice to have a little more housing down there? And if it's affordable housing, which is something we need, I'm fine with that. But my motive for seeing some housing down there is because I would like to see the park used more intensively and used more intensively by kids. And I think, we've only really built out phase one, I believe. Looking at Ms. Hirsch, phase one, right? So there's potentially 5 phases. So I would really like phase 2 and phase 3 and phase 4 completed. And I think phase 5 was sort of vaguely, all right, I'm being told to move on, but not for me. In any case, I would like to see the park completed. I would like to see some kind of playing field down there, for which Mr. Moss right here was always the advocate for, not me. So I feel like there's room for compromise here. I think if there's no housing there at all, I think what you see now is maybe what you have for a long time. I think if there's some housing down there, I think that creates some more incentive to get the rest of the park built out. So I think it's messy. All these decisions are messy. So let me just check my notes and see if there's anything else I want to say. That covers it. So just remember, May 23rd, at the community center at 6 p.m. There'll be a bigger, more detailed meeting about this topic.
Thank you. Vice Mayor McQuaid?
Well, I think, what everybody said is these are hard decisions because we'd all like more open space, we'd all like more parks, we'd all like more housing. But we do have a park at Pierce Street. It's not quite the park you wanted. It's not the park I don't think any of us wanted, but we're not done either. We're doing a study to see what kind of field we can put in down there. We're looking at different trees that can be planted. So we're doing some things. It's not like we're thinking, okay, did that, check off the box. No, we're still working on that. But we absolutely have to work regionally, in the city, in the state, in the United States, on the housing crisis. It's a huge, huge crisis. In Alameda County, for every person that's housed, now we're up to 3 people losing their housing. That's absolutely unsustainable. We have to do something about that. It's a small step, but it's a step that we need to take. So I support changing the zoning and support working hard to build up the park that we already have and make it closer to what you envisioned originally.
Does anyone want to make a motion?
What's the motion? All right.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll move adoption of Resolution 2019-30.
Second.
And are you also introducing a first reading? Put them together?
Procedurally, you have to,
motions, yeah.
exactly,
Okay.
procedurally, you have to act on CEQA first, and then you would make a second motion for the ordinance.
Councilmember Barnes?
Yes.
Councilmember Moss?
Yes.
Councilmember Pilch?
Yes.
Vice Mayor McQuaid?
Yes.
Mayor Nason?
Yes.
And the motion carries to adopt Resolution 2019-30.
Okay, I'll move that we introduce for first reading ordinance 2019-06, establishing zoning classifications consistent with the general plan land use map for the parcel located at the northwest corner of Cleveland and Washington.
I'll second it.
And I would like to have our city attorney point out what it means to be a first reading and a second reading.
So the first reading is an introduction of the ordinance. There is a second reading that will be on the next agenda 2 weeks from today. Once the council acts on that, it is a 30-day wait period before the ordinance becomes effective.
So there is a chance, this is just the first reading, there will be another reading on May 20th.
Councilmember Barnes?
Yes.
Councilmember Moss?
Yes.
Councilmember Pilch?
Yes.
Vice Mayor McQuaid?
Yes.
Mayor Nason?
Yes.
And the motion carries to introduce for first reading ordinance number 2019-06.
Thank you. And thank you all again, May 23rd, 6 p.m. at the Community Center. We'll hope to see you all there for a presentation by the developer. Thank you.
May 20th is the next regularly scheduled council meeting.
And what does it have to do with this? You said there's something happening May 20th. What is happening?
So the second reading of the ordinance that was just introduced this evening, it will be back on the council agenda in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Could I ask a question? Would it be possible to put the second reading after the May 23rd meeting? Is that at all possible?
Yeah, we could schedule it.
I think that would
Might
be
make some sense.
preferable, so people can hear the details of what the developer is proposing before we hold the second reading.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to public hearing 9-2, proposed amendments to Chapter 5, Section 5-24 of the Albany Municipal Code, tobacco retailer license to establish minimum package sizes and minimum prices for certain tobacco products. And this is a first reading. May we have a staff report? Well, we'll give people. Folks, we still have a good deal of work to do, so I'd appreciate if folks would walk out quietly. Who will be making this presentation, Nicole? Oh, this is you. Okay.
Okay,
Yeah, please go ahead.
go ahead and get started. This is a follow-up to the action that council took at its last meeting to approve an ordinance prohibiting sale of flavored tobacco products. At that time, in addition to approving that ordinance to second reading, the council also gave direction to me to come back as soon as possible with further ordinance amendments to establish minimum package sizes and minimum pricing for tobacco products, non-flavored as well as flavored. So the council didn't provide any specific direction as to number of cigarettes or number of cigars or the price levels. I did receive some technical assistance from the attorney at ChangeLab Solution based on their model ordinance that they've developed after looking at what a number of Bay Area cities have done. The ordinance does include proposed numbers as far as package sizes and prices, but those are certainly up to change if the council feels that other levels are appropriate based on what you think, in your judgment, would be best to achieve the goal of discouraging availability of these products to underage youth. The proposed ordinance contains a few components. It does prohibit discounts from full retail price, things like coupons or free tobacco products. It establishes minimum pack sizes for cigars and similar products. Minimum package sizes for cigarettes are already set by state law, so it does not address that. But for what's defined as little cigars or cigarillos, there's a 20 minimum package size of 20. For cigars, there's a minimum size of 6. However, there's an exception that single cigars can be sold if they're priced at $8 or more for each individual cigar. And as far as minimum pricing, there's a minimum price set at $8 for a pack of cigarettes, $8 for a pack of little cigars, which would be the 20 little cigars. or $8 for an individual cigar. And those prices are subject to an automatic annual CPI adjustment. So that's the gist of the ordinance. Happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from the council?
Sure. Did the numbers come straight from Change Lab or pretty much straight from them?
They did. I tried to find out what other cities have done, but I think the cities have addressed this issue have done it so recently that some of those ordinances aren't codified yet, so it wasn't an easy research project to find out exactly what other cities are doing.
Okay, thank you.
Who does the enforcing on this?
It's set up for the police department.
The police department,
Yeah.
okay. Thank you.
It could be somebody else designated by the city manager if deemed appropriate.
All right.
Other questions? Okay, do we have any cards for public hearing?
Yes. Amanda Gutzweller, Lynn Mary Rodriguez, and Paul Cummings.
Hi, good evening. My name's Amanda Gutzwiller. I'm with the American Lung Association. I want to thank you so much for considering to strengthen your local tobacco retailer license ordinance. As you know, tobacco is the leading cause of preventable death in the United States. Over 9,000 kids become daily smokers in California each year. And the Lung Association, we do encourage cities like yours to pass local laws that will help prevent and reduce tobacco use, especially among youth. Youth are price sensitive. Inexpensive tobacco products like cheap little cigars are often linked with tobacco initiation. For myself, I remember in high school, Black and Milds were a popular choice. They're those little cigars that are flavored and only $1. They got me hooked on tobacco, and eventually I smoked menthols. Thankfully, I don't smoke anymore, but I'm still concerned about our youth being targeted by the industry. And establishing a minimum price for tobacco products and prohibiting the redemption of tobacco product discounts and coupons are effective ways to reduce smoking and tobacco usage. These policies can protect youth by limiting their exposure and reduce susceptibility and initiation. That's why I'm encouraging you to adopt this ordinance to update your local tobacco retail license and establish a minimum price, minimum pack size, and prohibit coupon redemption for all tobacco products. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, council and staff. My name is Limairi. I am an Albany resident, and I first want to thank y'all for taking the steps to shape the retail environment in this city to reflect community values and impede tobacco industry control. I'd also like to offer some information regarding tobacco product price and pack size. While federal law prohibits the sale of individual cigarettes, many retailers currently sell cigars, little cigars and cigarillos individually, making them appealing and more affordable to youth. Tobacco companies strategically price their products to capture price-sensitive consumers such as lower-income community residents and communities of color. Studies indicate that tobacco pricing strategies serve as pro-tobacco advertising, indicating that school-aged youth, for example, are more likely to experiment when tobacco products are priced very low. Establishing a minimum price and pack size for tobacco products and prohibiting the redemption of tobacco discounts and coupons will not only decrease tobacco consumption, it will furthermore reduce tobacco-related disparities in Albany. And lastly, I would like to point out that tobacco product price and pack size data was recently collected by Alameda County Tobacco Control Coalition and the Public Health Department, where we saw that 80% of stores surveyed sell little cigars and cigarillos in pack sizes as small as 1 or 2 for prices less than $2 before taxes. 4 out of 5 of these stores surveyed offer discounts or accept coupons for tobacco products. And the lowest price for a pack of little cigars and cigarillos is a 6-pack for 99 cents. So I would just ask if you could please consider this information as you vote tonight. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Paul Cummings, and I'm a City of Albany resident, and I want to thank you for discussing this issue again. I'm amazed that it came back so quickly, and thank you so much. And, you know, I want to talk about flavored tobacco for a moment. When you guys were voting on this in early April, there were 2 bills in the Assembly that would have banned flavored tobacco sales in the state. Those both died. And so it's really important that we do things locally because it's unlikely to happen in Sacramento. So thank you for taking this on. I think the pack size of 20 for the little cigars makes a lot of sense. If you look at the little cigars, they're the same size as cigarettes, and they should be sold in packs the same. This is really an important piece of discouraging youth experimentation. And so I think that sort of taking that step will be a strong message for Albany residents as well as for neighboring communities. So thank you for that leadership. And just echoing what Amanda said, that young people are price sensitive. You know, my son's in 3rd grade, so fortunately he's not quite susceptible to this yet, but, you know, he's never going to be able to save $8 the way he's going. So I think that on top of being price sensitive, just, you know, young people not saving, this is the minimum price will also have a huge impact in protecting our young people. And so I think that the flavored tobacco ban that you already passed, the minimum price and the minimum pack size, they all work together as a strong net to protect our youth and our residents in general from tobacco. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, then I'll bring it back to council.
I just, you know, I think we're all in support of this, but I just wanted to add something that I realized a couple weekends ago when I was doing a beach cleanup. That one of the potential benefits from us passing this, when you go out there and picking up little bits of plastic that are going into the ecosystem, it's amazing how many of those are the plastic cigar holders. The tobacco goes away, but those little plastic holders stay around forever on the beaches until they get, you know, disintegrated further. So
they're catching up with the cigarette butts, which are the classic thing we always picked up at on beach cleanups.
They all go onto the great garbage patch in the middle of the ocean.
Oh, I can't even think about that. Okay. Do I hear a motion?
I'll move we introduce ordinance 2019-05 for first reading, approving amendments to sections 5-24 tobacco retailer license of the Albany Municipal Code to establish minimum package sizes, minimum prices for certain tobacco products.
I'll second.
Sorry, who's the second?
I seconded, yeah.
Sorry. Councilmember Barnes?
Yes.
Councilmember Moss?
yes.
Councilmember Pilch?
Yes.
Vice Mayor McQuay?
Yes.
Mayor Nason?
Yes.
And
Motion passes.
I will make one comment. I just want to thank staff for getting this back to us so quickly. I was also surprised
Indeed.
it came so fast.
Much appreciated. Okay, thank you all. We move on to unfinished business. 10-1, fiscal year 2020 sugar sweetened beverage tax draft expenditure plan. And the staff is recommending that the council review the draft expenditure plan and authorize them to incorporate the plan into the city's budget. May we have a staff report, please?
Thank you, Mayor. This follows up on the study session the council held in April regarding the sugar sweetened beverage tax that was adopted by Albany voters in November of 2016. That was your second study session. Again, this is still a fairly new tax with regard to analysis of the overall revenue, and so we continue to monitor that. But based on the feedback we received from the council as part of the study session, you see before you up on the screen, which the Assistant City Manager will review in detail, the proposed funding for the upcoming year. Something that I'd like to call out in particular that wasn't necessarily discussed at your previous meeting, but I think it's important to highlight, is the Healthy Me Music and Movement Program, the last item there from the total line. That was something that was suggested by the school district, and unfortunately the email got caught in our spam filter, which has since been rectified, but I apologize again. And thank you, Superintendent Williams, for still being here tonight at our meeting to discuss this further. In looking into the program, it certainly hits a lot of the themes that the council expressed in terms of reaching out to youth and folks that may not necessarily be appraised of healthy living opportunities. And so we thought this was an important addition. So without further discussion here, I will refer over to Isabel to walk you through the expenditure plan and take any questions.
Okay, good evening. So as Nicole mentioned, the plan considers funding for programs for the fiscal year to 2020. And most programs that are proposed are current programs that are funded with the sugar sweetened beverage tax revenue in fiscal year 2019. And there's also a focus on city programs and opportunities as expressed by the council on April 1st at the study session. So the first item is the installation of water bottle filling stations. So we would be continuing the purchase and installation of more bottle fillers at other locations as suggested by the council at City Hall, Senior Center, and then more on Solano Avenue, San Pablo Avenue, and the Albany Greenway. Installation feasibility will depend on the availability and proximity of water lines, and it is estimated that 6 to 8 filling stations could be installed with this amount of funds, pending additional analysis to determine most functional sites for installation. So total cost is $90,000. The second item is the continuation of free nutrition, cooking, and gardening programs. Currently, the Recreation Department is offering free nutrition and cooking camps and classes for youth and adults, and we are also proposing to add some gardening programs as mentioned at the April 1st work session. And the camps classes would be offered year-round, and camps during the summer when kids are out of school. Proposed funding for that is $35,000. The third option is to continue free physical fitness classes in parks. Again, this is a new program being offered by the Recreation Department, currently funded with SSB funds. The classes are about to begin, and we believe that they'll be very popular, and Council has expressed interest in continuing those programs in the next fiscal year. The Crossing Guard program, again, discussion about continuing to fund the contract with All City Management Services, which was hired in fiscal year 19 and funded by sugar sweetened beverage tax proceed. The contract has helped to lessen the workload on our police department, and so that they can focus on what police departments do. And the cost for that contract is $130,000 for the next fiscal year. Number 5 is Safe Route to Schools, the bike safety programs, and also walking school buses. So the $20,000 would fund a bike safety program, which would provide intensive education and training courses for bicycling to 4th and 5th grade students. And it's typically done during PE classes. And there's a short description of what the classes would be. And students would learn how to perform a bike safety check, adjust their helmets, communicate with traffic, abide by the rules of the road, communicate at intersections, and safely navigate their school's neighborhood by bike. The program is currently offered by a nonprofit, Cycles of Change. The actual walking school buses would be provided by Transform, which is the current agency funded by Alameda County. And we would work with them so that they could provide that program here in the city. And then, so for those two programs, it would be $20,000. And then, as mentioned by Nicole, the Healthy Me Music and Movement Program, which is currently being provided in Berkeley schools and funded by the Berkeley Sugar Sweetened Beverage Tax. I had the pleasure of meeting the Natalia Bernal, the instructor and founder of the Healthy Me Music and Movement Program, and she's very passionate about what she does, and would love to bring her program to Albany youth. And I believe there's more people who want to talk about it, so I'll conclude with that. So the total proposed expenditure plan for fiscal year 2020 is $305,000.
Any questions from council?
I have a couple.
Sure.
Oh, go ahead, you're on the end.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to butt in like that. Just one quick question. Is there already a filling station at Community Center?
The community center, yes.
There is, okay.
It should have been installed at the end of April, but I don't know if that's been done. But it is planned, and it has been purchased, but I'm not sure if it's been installed.
Yeah, I haven't been there for a little bit, but I haven't seen it yet. Okay, thank you. That's it.
So I just wanted to have to make a question out of this. We had received suggestions of podiatry and other health programs at the senior center, mobile health clinic, mobile dental clinic. Are those are still being researched to see if they're possible to do through another funding source? Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
We just need more time to continue to research those programs.
And I have a question about Healthy Me, and maybe Anna will get to that, but it's being offered through the city of Albany, but where is it offered and how does that part work?
The city of Berkeley?
I mean, if we do it.
Oh, if we would do it, it would be offered by the city of Albany. We would contract directly with the instructor, and the instructor would provide her classes to different preschools, transition kindergartens, and kindergarten classes.
So she'd go into the schools and
she
do
would,
it? Okay,
yes.
great.
So it would be both AUSD classes and private preschools.
Great.
Thank you. Any other questions? No?
Questions?
Okay, any public comment?
Yes.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Val Williams. I'm the superintendent for the Albany School District, and I just want to thank you guys all for considering the Healthy Me program. And I'm going to yield all of my time to Anna Mansker, who's going to tell you all about it, because she's the one who actually did a lot of the work on this.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here this evening. My name is Anna Mansker. I am the director of Albany Children's Center. Up on Jackson Street, we have preschool classrooms there, as well as our transitional kindergarten classrooms. I also have the pleasure of overseeing the before and after care programs that are part of Albany Unified School District, located on the elementary school campuses. I'm extremely grateful and very, very thankful that the Healthy Me Music and Movement program made it onto our proposed budget here. I think it's an extremely admirable decision for the city of Albany to allocate a portion of these proceeds from the sugar sweetened beverage tax directly to the education of our youngest learners here in Albany. The Healthy Me Music and Movement program is a multi-sensory experience designed for young students. I've seen it in action in Berkeley, and it really works well. Natalia does an incredible job of creating a developmentally appropriate program in both Spanish and English that is fun and engaging. She has an incredible way of reaching each child and bringing family members into the movement as well. We know when children are having fun and they're directly engaged age, that learning can last a lifetime. She has specifically designed her program to and curriculum to directly address our nation's and world's crises around sugar-sweetened beverages. And these lessons and songs are both in English and Spanish, and the impacts last a lifetime. So thank you so very much for putting that up there. I hope that maybe you will want to join one of her classrooms and see it in action. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Ken McCroskey, and this time as a Safe Routes to Schools volunteer. Thank you for funding or proposing to fund, I should say, right? The crossing guard program. Enough said on that, but I didn't want to just talk about another one of the lower cost measures. In this case, the Safe Routes to Schools program. We've actually had the Learn to Ride program in our elementary schools in 4th or 5th grade for all of our students for about 9 years now, I think. And Albany is kind of unique in doing that. Most schools in Alameda County do it in middle school. We do it in elementary school, and our kids are ready to ride to middle school and have the skills to do that. So I think it's extremely important to do that. Other than that, I can answer any questions you have on walking school buses. Yeah, okay.
I saw my first walking school bus sign the other day near the middle school. It was just great to see it.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
Ken, I have a question.
Yeah.
So are you seeing any impact, sorry, I hate that word, effect yet from the sidewalk repair program and making your life easier to do the Safe Routes to School program?
I'm sorry, from the which program?
The sidewalk repair program, the parcel tax.
You know, I'm not an emergency responder. Have I seen direct results? You know, I'm not on the street anymore. I'm not running a walking school bus anymore myself. So I'm just seeing it, and also I'm sort of tangentially involved with the high school as a Safe Routes to School volunteer, but it's a much reduced involvement from my involvement with the elementary and middle school. So the direct answer to your question is no. But the indirect answer is I'm also an Albany pedestrian, and I do see a strong impact. And I've seen a strong impact in my neighborhood in some major tree upheavals that have been smoothed down. And so, yes, I am seeing an impact. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to make a comment here. I'm going to join in Ken's, Mr. McCroskey's comment that of appreciation to see the Safe Routes to School as well as the Crossing Guard program included. I do really believe, and I'm not a great believer in using Albany to test various kinds of theories all the time, but on this one, I think that a 1 square mile town is just a wonderful place to make a really huge push to get kids walking and biking to school, because any child who is not mobility impaired should be able to get to school without a lift, at least most days. And I really hope to see us continue to move in that direction. I really like this program. Any other comments? Any? Okay.
I'd like to make one comment. I was really happy to see this Healthy Me Music and Movement program. I don't know anything about the program, but what I'm not sure if it'll be as effective. But to my mind, the original intent of this whole soda tax idea was that we would end up with healthier kids, and it's occurred to me over time that the place to kind of get to the kids is as early as possible. And that's what I like about that program, that at least it's coming in on that earliest level. Everything else on our list are all great things. I'm not sure, how connected they're going to be to the health of children in Albany going forward. I mean, it's sure if you cross the street safely, that's healthier than being hit by a car. But it's in relationship to soda and that kind of thing, I think it's a little tangential. I'm fine with what we've laid out, but I'm hoping in the future, programs that kind of target that earliest age might be the most effective in terms of what the original goals were and logic about the sugar-sweetened beverage tax. So,
Any other comments? Do I hear a motion? Do we need motion? This is just a direction to staff, actually, isn't it?
Do you want a motion?
No, it's a resolution.
It says authorize staff.
Oh, no, sorry, you're right.
Yeah.
well, I move to authorize the staff to follow the proposed budget.
I'll second that.
Councilmember Barnes?
Yes.
Councilmember Moss?
Yes.
Councilmember Pilch?
Yes.
Vice Mayor McQuay?
Yes.
Mayor Nason?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Okay, we move on to number 11, 11-.
Quick time check with regard
Oh,
to this item,
yes.
if you'd like to continue it to May 20th, or if you'd like to go ahead and address it this evening. We're flexible either way.
I think we should go ahead and address it, but we'll need a motion to continue after.
I'll move we continue till 10:45.
I'll second that.
Aye.
Yes?
Yes.
Acclamation.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay,
Great.
SB2 grant
Yes.
application request.
Given this late hour, I'll be somewhat brief in my presentation, but this is, in effect, a program at the state. SB2 was part of a housing bill package that went into effect in 2017 and effectively raised funds related to housing transactions that established a permanent funding source to increase affordable housing stock in the state of California. So the notice of funding availability became available at the end of March. Albany is eligible for a non-competitive $160,000 grant, so we're pretty excited about that. The intent behind the program is to accelerate housing production, streamline approval of housing development, facilitate affordable housing, and promote development that's consistent with the state planning priorities, as was noted earlier in the evening. There's obviously a lot of change happening within housing legislation, and it seems like every year we're getting acquainted with new housing bills. So effectively, what we are looking to do with the grant money that we're eligible for is implement a combination of both housing element policies and general plan policies for making some code changes, and also establishing overlay standards and further identifying housing element opportunity sites and creating objective design guidelines. So effectively, one issue that has come up in years past with the Council strategic plans is increasing the building heights on San Pablo. So that would be, we'd be looking at a code amendment that would achieve that and increase the building heights. In looking at our code, we have a planned residential commercial overlay district, which could be made to be much more robust and could facilitate higher density infill development along San Pablo Avenue. So in making those standards more robust, we'd also be looking at that concurrently with housing element opportunity sites that currently don't have that type of designation. They are subject to the current regulations, which are at that 38-foot height limit and other development restrictions. And then lastly, we'd be looking at establishing objective design guidelines. This is something else that is coming down as part of the state housing legislation, and what that would do is effectively update our San Pablo Avenue design guidelines, but we'd be establishing objective criteria. So if a developer came in, they're effectively checking the boxes that are consistent with the design guidelines that have been crafted. So where we are right now is we've been working on the grant application. As part of that, we need a resolution to accompany the grant application to go to the state, which is the resolution in your packet, Resolution 2019-29. Once we have that, we'll finish up the grant application and get it sent to the state.
Questions from council?
So you don't need specific, like, height limits or locations tonight. All you want to do is apply for the grant, and they'll come back to us to really talk about it.
Yeah, and ideally, we would, we'll work pretty closely with the Planning and Zoning Commission as they go through the update process, but certainly we can keep the council abreast of that. And we've also are going to work with Jean Iceberg, who is a contract planner who's done a lot of work for us on UC Village and other code amendments, and she's back from maternity leave, and we're one of her preferred clients, so we're ready to put her to work.
Quick question. Well, they didn't suffer through maternity leave. So there's nothing in the language, which seemed fairly specific to me, that will restrict what we can do with the money to specific requirements following Peggy as to height limits or densities or anything like that.
The dollar amount, is fixed based on the population size, but in terms of how we use that money, as long as it's for housing, we're pretty flexible in how we apply that.
Okay.
This money, I take it's going to be spent by consultants or spent on consultants?
Spent on consultants, yeah.
Okay, so it's not just, we can't just have the staff doing some extra work that they get paid for, but we're going to have to hire out. This idea of setting up areas that are kind of pre-planned might be a way that I'd put it. This would include, they might have all the CEQA ready to go, I know this has been done in Oakland in a number of areas for housing, so developer comes in, boom, they don't have to do a lot of the paperwork that usually holds up projects.
Right, and in this case, this grant money is also eligible for CEQA streamlining. And I'll just tell you, $160,000 for us is a lot of grant money. So even with the objectives that we have outlined, I suspect we'll still have money left over.
So I guess that was another question. To me, it doesn't seem like a lot of money for the amount of work that you might potentially have to do, but you think this could actually produce some of these areas that are ready to go?
Yeah, that's why we like working with a sole proprietor.
Okay, all right.
About the CEQA, my understanding in conversations with you is that most of our projects many of our projects might be CEQA exempt since they're less than 5 acres, and the newer regulations say that infill projects of less than 5 acres are CEQA exempt categorically, which is good news for us. So,
Vice Mayor McQuaid, any questions?
Was that a change that came down in 2017 with the 15 bill package?
No, the CEQA exemption?
For 5 acres or under?
No, that was actually, it's sometimes referred to as the Jerry Brown exemption. That goes back to his tenure as mayor of Oakland. And so it's been on the books, I think, for maybe
Yeah, the infill
20 years?
exemption's been around a while. There are other criteria besides just the 5 acre limitation. It's got to be consistent with existing zoning and general plan, and there have to be utilities available, so there are other criteria that have to be met, but it's designed for the smaller infill projects.
Utilities available, meaning there has to be exactly the right connections or just access to utilities?
Yeah, like existing sewer, PG&E service, that sort of thing.
Which I assume San Pablo Ave, many of the locations would qualify for that. Okay. I have some comments too, but I don't know.
Yep, let's give the public, do we have any public comment? Thank you. Okay, let's go to comments.
Public is shaking its head. Yeah. Comments is, Jeff informs me that I informed him about this grant, so I'm very happy about that. And I've been talking with the staff a lot about this, and just today as well, because it might have a nexus with economic development as well. And I've asked staff, if they can, to leave the language of the grant application open enough so that it could include a specific plan, should that be appropriate. So I think this is a great opportunity for us.
Thank you. Vice Mayor McQuaid?
Well, I guess, I don't know if it's appropriate, but if necessary, it would be great if we could include Solano and north of Brighton, or Brighton and north, I guess. and certainly raising the height limits, but I don't know if that all needs to go in the grant application or just
Yeah,
whatever.
we can tailor the grant application, so we're not looking just at San Pablo. We can look at other aspects of the city.
Thank you.
Any other? I think it's great. I'm certainly ready to move it forward.
Anything from you, Councilmember Barnes? Okay, then let's hear our motion. It's a resolution.
It is a resolution, isn't it?
2019-29.
Yes, I would move that the council adopt Resolution 2019-29, authorizing staff to proceed with the SB2 grant application process to submit to the State Department of Housing and Community Development, and to authorize the city manager to execute the grant agreement.
Second.
Councilmember Barnes?
Yes.
Councilmember Moss?
Yes.
Councilmember Pilch?
Yes.
Vice Mayor McQuaid?
Yes.
Mayor Nason?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Okay, we come to other business and announcement of events and future agenda items. I mentioned that I think that we should begin thinking about a public forum on SB 50 and other housing measures that could impact planning for Albany. I think people should at least have the opportunity to learn a little more about what we're all hearing at all of the regional meetings that we attend. Any other additions to future announcements?
Yeah, I just got word today. I don't know if there's any interest. Several council members came to my wife's office. They hosted a information thing on SB 50 that Scott Wiener spoke at. The other group that's in that same space, SF HAC, San Francisco Housing Action Coalition, is doing another gathering if there is general interest. This is over in the city, but it's going to be Nancy Skinner will be speaking at that, along with Mayor Schaaf. So if there's interest, I can. So, I don't, that just came to mind, so I don't have it right in front of me, but if there is
Yeah, if you would circulate that, that would be great. I think I saw something from the anti-SB 50 movement as well, a talk by someone associated with 48 Hills, which is an online newspaper that opposes some of the policies.
Right.
All right, if there is nothing further, then...
Sure, just really quickly, sorry I didn't mention earlier, but I wish you all a happy Bike to Work Day on Thursday. After confirming with the Vice Mayor my attendance at the Mayor's Conference, no sooner did I do that and look at my calendar and realize I have a conflict, so I will not be going to that. So.
That means there's a dinner up for grabs, because I'm going to be speaking at the League of Women Voters conference on diversity, equity, and inclusion that night. So if anyone is interested in...
Where is this again? What's the date?
Well, the mayor's conference is on Wednesday, day after tomorrow. And it's in Hayward, and Vice Mayor McQuaid is going, but our membership in the mayor's conference entitles us to a couple of dinners, so we'll have a dinner going begging if we don't have another person.
Yeah, let me just make sure I'm not...
Great.
Into something else. Oops. Well, I'll have to talk later. I think my phone went dead.
Thank you, it's appreciated. Nancy O'Malley will be speaking. Tonight, I would like us to adjourn in memory of Melinda Rogers. I'm not sure that she had a connection to Albany except through friendship with Jim and Beth Beller and Patricia Moore, who I think we all knew as Mama Bear when she lived on the Bulb. And as Jim explained, Melinda Rogers died in her tent in Oakland the other day, leaving behind Giggles, the terrier, who I think is now joining the Jim and Beth family. And so let's take a moment to think about Melinda Rogers and all those who are living in tents and in difficult and unhealthy situations. And with that, we are adjourned.